We are Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Evan Jansen. The show is always live and broadcast from our studios right here in Johannesburg, Auckland Park to be exact. Now, we're also live on YouTube at that time with the whole show available on demand a little bit later on our YouTube channel. 9 to 12 every weekday morning. Today we ask you a question. What are you doing to save water? Yes, the entire Southern Africa is battling some of the toughest drought conditions in recent memory. The outlook for the next couple of months is not good, so we have to change the way we manage our water individually here in Southern Africa. But before we get into that, we've got an entire show dedicated to dealing with drought. Today, let's get the news headlines from Elvis Presley.
Thank you, Evan, and let's get right into it. Let's take a look at all your headlines. President Jacob Zuma will embark on his first official visit to Germany later today. He will meet with the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, in Berlin tomorrow. The University of Johannesburg Trade Union AHAU and other workers' representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. And cellular network operator MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned following a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. That's all coming up in a short while, but first, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and thank you very much, and good morning to you at home as well. As big a weekend as we've had, we're going to have a big week this week, and this is what we've got in store for you in the sports. The crisis hit IAAF waits with bated breath for a massive doping report. Former Bok captains Venan Claessens and Dimon Serfontein in a campaign to get Heineke Meyer fired. Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns win their derbies to book their spots in the Telkom knockout final. And that's what we've got for you in the sports. Make sure you stick around for that. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. That's all coming up later. Right now, your top story this hour. President Jacob Zuma will embark on his first official visit to Germany later today. He will meet with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin tomorrow. The visit comes as the two countries have developed into major trading partners.
The German flag has flown over a reunited Germany for 25 years now. In that time, the country has emerged to become the de facto leader of Europe. When South African President Jacob Zuma arrives here on Monday, he will have the chance to personally assess this key relationship for his country.
I think it indicates that South Africa regards Germany as a very important partner.
South Africa is Germany's biggest trading partner in Africa, and there are over 600 German companies invested in the country.
We see this upcoming presidential visit to Germany as an opportunity for a big push forward, as there are a number of investment opportunities that are discussed by German companies. That could be something like a big package after Zuma is heading back to South Africa.
One firm with important ties to South Africa is the German automaker Volkswagen, which produces about 120,000 vehicles a year at its plant on the Eastern Cape. While VW's emissions scandal has dominated the headlines, there's been no sign so far that that could impact the company's business in South Africa.
Just a few days before the scandal got public, the investment into South Africa was announced by Volkswagen, and I think they have no reason to review their plans.
Some German business leaders, though, have worried that they've lost some protection since the suspension of a bilateral investment treaty 2 years ago. Behind me here is the office of German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and it will be the site of the meeting between these two world leaders whose countries have undergone such dramatic shifts over the past 20 years. What they discuss on Tuesday could go a long way towards shaping relations between these two nations for the next 20. Ira Spitzer, SABC News, Berlin.
Back home, the University of Johannesburg Trade Union NAHAU and other worker representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. Under the new agreement, which was signed yesterday, cleaning, protection and gardening services will now be insourced. The university's protection services outsourcing contract will lapse soon. It says it will not enter into any new contracts. Last week, chaos broke out at the Kingsway campus when the students and the workers staged a protest. University management says that protesters broke fencing to disturb students studying in the library, leaving taps open and blocking drains. More than 140 students and workers will meanwhile appear in the Brixton Magistrates Court today. They were arrested following the violation of a court order not to disrupt exams. Cellular network operator MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned. The company has appointed its executive chairperson, Batuman Hleko, to act in Dabengwa's position. Dabengwa's resignation follows a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. This after the company's failure to deregister illegal SIM cards. Last week, the South African government expressed concern on the issue. Now, that's all we have for you for this hour. Eben Janssen is standing by with more in-depth interviews and analysis. Over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. Very concerning with the continued heat wave here in the northern parts of southern Africa. And then also, of course, the rain outlook is not looking good for the next couple of months. With the festive season now fast approaching, South Africans could be forced to dig deep into their pockets. This as experts warn of a looming food price hike amidst the drought that's decimated crops and left thousands of livestock dead. According to a report by the UN Food and Nutrition Security Working Group, the expected commercial maize crop for 2015 is estimated at 9.84 million tons, which is 31% less than last year and 20% below the average maize production for the last 5 years. Now, from studies in poverty and the Inequality Institute, we are joined this morning by Busiso Moyo, who is their advocacy officer. Very good morning to you, Busiso. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The outlook doesn't look good. How concerned are you with what experts are terming looming food price hikes and food security issues over the coming festive season?
Yeah, well, I mean, the situation is very concerning, I must say. But I think what's more concerning is the fact that, you know, as a state, we don't really have sort of like a vulnerability assessment because, you know, in an ideal situation, you know, we shouldn't be faced with such. You know, droughts should not necessarily catch us off guard. And I think moving forward, that's pretty much what's at stake here, to see how better we can, you know, further prepare to see such things coming forward in advance.
Well, you say we shouldn't be affected by this. What normally then are the factors that play a role when food prices go up? We see that food prices go up quite often, but we never see them come back down again.
No, true. And I think, you know, I sympathize with the state in this regard because, you know, there are a whole range of global factors, you know, from your oil prices to the drought to seasonal rainfalls and so forth. And I think, you know, there's a whole range of myriad factors that contribute to that. But I think more importantly, water is the most important factor when we now tap into the agriculture sector and seek to see what sort of, you know, gains we'll be making in terms of harvesting and so forth. So this drought really presents a very, you know, torrid moment for South Africa, and I think it's best that we humble ourselves, because we also must take into account the role we play regionally as well in terms of how we then feed the rest of the SADC region and so forth.
That's right. The outlook for the entire Southern Africa is for the next 2 months to be quite dry. Who do you expect to be worst affected, and what's the sort of increase in staples that you foresee in the next couple of months?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to depend first and foremost who comes to South Africa's aid. More than that, I think Zimbabwe will be affected the most regionally. just in light of the deficit of payments and the balance of trade there. Fortunately, though, we do have Zambia, and according to the same report that you just quoted earlier, the outlook there is looking a tad more promising.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, in light of the weak, Chinese currency and the copper belt there and so forth, we don't know what ramifications that will have in terms of their surplus output to the region. So, look, at this stage, it's not exactly clear. And for what it's worth, I mean, as South Africans, we ought to be keeping the faith. Who knows? The rain might just fall.
Just give us an idea how food prices increase and which are the food items that have gone up the most this year and which are the food items that you think will take a little jump towards the end of the year?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to your basic needs basket. The whole notion of what exactly is it that, constitutes that basic needs basket of South Africans. And obviously, it goes without saying that maize in particular, that has gone relatively way higher compared to previous annual sector determinations. A report by Agri SA speaks to a 6.4 year-on-year rise in terms of maize as a staple food. And so obviously it goes back to that idea of a basic needs basket, that stuff that we speak to when we speak of a decent standard of living for the populace. So that's where the poor will pretty much feel the crunch the hardest.
Well, Busisa, thank you for giving us an insight into what the outlook is like for the next couple of months and then the last couple of years. From the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute, Busisa Moya is the advocacy officer, painting a picture that's, well, not looking too pretty at the moment. But it's not just South Africa, it's Southern Africa. The devastating drought currently gripping the country has also not spared neighboring Botswana and other SADC countries. Botswana says it is their worst drought in more than 5 years, particularly in the country's southern parts, which it says severely affected. Dams and underground water have totally dried up. According to the South African Weather Service, the situation is unlikely to get better until March next year. Now, Motupi Sekako visited Botswana recently and compiled this report.
The temperatures, as you can see here, November, December, January, the confidence is very high for the Southern African countries of getting above normal temperatures. So for rainfall, we said below normal. Now, for the temperatures, we say above normal. So the combination of hot and dry is not a good combination at all. Remember, I said that little rain you might get, and then high rate of evaporation. Let's look December, January to February. February is the first month of the autumn. Can you see? We're still saying above normal temperatures. And for the same period, we still continue to say above normal rainfall.
The situation in Gaborone is dire. Botswana is dependent on 2 dams for its water provision. Currently, both are almost empty.
If there's a crisis in South Africa, there's a bigger crisis in Botswana for drought. I think we are now cruising into our 4th or 5th year of no rain in the southern part of the country. So it's a very serious situation because as we speak right now, Gaborone, or the greater Gaborone, that means from Katling right the way to the southern part of the country, uses around 125 million liters of water a day. As we speak, we are dependent on a pipeline that delivers 60 million liters of water, and we built boreholes about 100 kilometers from Gaborone, which also inject a further 30 million liters. So generally, we are surviving on 90 million liters of water a day for the greater Gaborone, and rationing water to ensure everybody gets water.
Gaborone Dam is a main supply of water to the country's capital, Gaborone, but a mere 5.7% of water now remains in the dam. South Africa has been supplying water to Gaborone from Molatedi Dam in northwest. That is no longer possible. Molatedi Dam is almost dried up.
The Molatedi Dam used to give us 20 million liters of water, but in the agreement we have, it is understood that if it falls below 26%, then that portion would be reduced by half to 10 million. But as you know, Molatedi itself is drying, and therefore we have, even that portion has been halved.
In Botswana rural areas, the situation is not any better. Subsistence livestock farmers are struggling to get drinking water for their animals. Around the area of Good Hope, some of the farmers depend on a good Samaritan. He allows their animals to drink water from his boreholes.
if you are a Motswana, you can't sell the whole kettles. But on Hela, just to keep it, now I want to keep it about 10, only 10. That one maybe can survive up to the end of, up to March.
Grazing lands is devoid for any grass. Most farmers cannot afford fodder. Farming under the current drought condition is tough.
Life is very difficult. For us to live with our cattle, not being able to plow, no food for our cattle, no grass, so we are really having a problem.
2 dams on which Botswana currently depend for water supply are only 60% full. The Tsibogo and the Khatlon dams are in the north part of the country. The government believes that getting water from Zambezi River in the north and from Katse Dam in Lesotho could be Botswana's solution to its current water challenges. Mutupi Sekaku, SABC News, Gaborone, Botswana.
Yes, 2015 is the warmest year on record globally thus far. So global warming is real. But for more on how the drought is affecting us here close to home, food security especially, Mr. Peter Netshipale is the Deputy Director General for Community Development at the Department of Social Development here in South Africa. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben, and morning to the listeners.
Food security is the buzzword for everybody. How food secure are we here in South Africa right now with the outlook for the next 5 months? And then if you can maybe paint us a picture of how this would affect the entire SADC region.
In South Africa, the report that we have currently from State SA indicated that we are food secure at the present moment. But as you are aware that drought and any adverse effect into the climate has got a threat to food production. At the present moment, from the government side, we have got multiple programs that feed communities from all spheres of government, Department of Social Development, Department of Education, and also agriculture and our sectors, NDA. We now are worried, like anybody else, that should the drought continue, we might see a major effect in terms of the availability of food, because these small farm holders and the food gardens, they depend much on water. And if you've got drought, it will have a major impact on the food production. Therefore, it will hamper our programs to provide food to the communities.
The outlook for rain is not that good either. The next 2 months looks very dry, which is a first in more than 20 years that we've experienced here in the northern parts of South Africa and then the southern Africa in general. What do you suggest is a way forward? What should we do going forward from now to, as individuals and then as the wider nation, to come to grips with this problem that's very real?
I think what is necessary is an integrated approach that the country needs to take between the private sector, government, and the non-profit organization in food production, especially in the areas where those staple foods need to be produced. We need to come together and ensure that we have enough food to feed the communities. For example, within the Department of Social Development, especially from the SASA side, they've got a program called Relief of Social Distress. That program ensures that communities that are poor and vulnerable are given food parcels or voucher to go and buy food. And also within our DSD, within the national policy on food security, we are mandated to provide affordable food to our communities. And we have set out over 166 community nutrition development centers where people can walk in and have food. And we have seen a number increasing drastically over these 6 months. So it means that as a country, we should be able now to begin to discuss the issues of food production, doing mass approach where from household food gardens, small farm holders, and including the commercial farms to come together for production of food.
And what's your message to the individuals, to people out there who still don't think it's affecting them? This drought is really affecting everybody right now.
The message is that I think what we need to do is that as a department, we provide what we called community capacities to be able to convince people to begin to look for producing food at any opportunity that they get in their homes, in the area where there are rivers. But with the imminent of the drought and the rain shortages that we have now, or climate change as it is, it will be fundamental for us as South Africans to begin to devise some means so that we can ensure that we don't go down, we don't decline in terms of our food production.
Thank you for joining us this morning. That is the Deputy Director General for Community Development at the Department of Social Development in South Africa, Mr. Peter Netshipale. Thank you once again for coming in and giving us your views this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan.
Now, as the water shortage has become one of the major problems facing Southern Africa, we are at Newsroom asking you today, what are you doing to save water? That's our question of the day. What are you doing to save water? What are you going to do? What are you doing in your personal capacity at your home to help us save water? Because drought is real. It's a problem. The outlook for the next couple of months are not good. Let's have a look at some of the tweets what are people saying with regards to Mavula Mabena says at SABC Newsroom, now people want to know how to save water. We at the rural areas already know how to. We must all feel the pain. Water shortage, says Mavula Mabena, tweeting us here at SABC Newsroom. Then Relumetse Mompati says, I save water by making sure there are no taps running unnecessarily around the house before I leave or go to work. Thank you very much. That is an excellent idea. SABC Newsroom. Then Stambiso says, at SABC Newsroom, at home, we are no longer bathing 3 times a day. Now, it's in the morning and in the evening before we sleep. I suggest maybe even a quick shower before we go to bed in the evening is probably a better idea. Johannes Shaku says at SABC Newsroom, drought in my early age, it was a hell of poverty. Rich people must stop and big baths use 5 liters to bath, please, says Johannes Shaku. Yes, very much so. Take a shower. Take a shower instead of a bath, I say. A quick shower at that. Thank you for those tweets coming into our feed at SABC Newsroom from all of you viewers at home. Our question of the day, of course, deals with what are you doing to save water? Drought is very real. Look at this picture. If you don't understand the gravity of the situation facing Southern Africa right now, the picture that you see there is of Victoria Falls. Yes, the greatest waterfall on the planet is dry. Just little streams of water running over what used to be called the smoke that thunders. It is dry. This picture from Peter de Meyer sent in and is talking about the drought that's affecting Southern Africa, the entire southern region, really. Wonderful picture there, just to put us give us an idea of how low our water sources are. That's our question of the day. Of course, the tweets have been coming in. Thank you very much for those tweets. We'll put them all up throughout the show as we carry on. Let's take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Europe. The Times here reports that David Cameron is ready to hold the EU referendum in June next year if other leaders agree to the bulk of his reform package at a summit next month. Then we move to New York, where the International New York Times says Hassan Rouhani hinted that some outlets were connected to security forces responsible for a wave of arrests aimed at crippling Western influence. Then finally in China, the South China Morning Post reports that air quality reached extremely hazardous levels in the northeastern Chinese city of Shenyang as northern China began to burn coal to heat homes for winter. Global warming is upon us. It's affecting all of us. We should really think about the coal burning that we do. Let's take a look now at the courts here in South Africa. What is happening in our courts? Johannesburg, Tabunkala was accused of being part of a gang that brutally attacked two couples at Rhodes Park in Kensington. He's expected to appear in the magistrate's court. Now, the 24-year-old faces charges of murder, rape and attempted murder. Then, still in Johannesburg, the grandson of late former President Nelson Mandela is expected to appear in the magistrate's court after being accused of raping a 15-year-old girl. The 24-year-old father of three was granted bail of 7,000 rand in August this year. Then we move down south to Port Elizabeth. Christopher Panayotu's legal team will today attempt to bring another bail application for their client in the magistrate's court in the city. He's been denied bail on 2 accounts already. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we continue looking at drought and how it's affecting the entire Southern Africa, not just South Africa. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
At Philips, we wake up every morning and ask, how can innovation make a difference to you? How can thousands of LEDs bring the pyramids to life and light up hearts? How can an air fryer make delicious traditional meals with up to 80% less fat? How can portable ultrasound be part of a program to help lower infant mortality in Uganda? Because the only innovation that really matters is innovation that matters to you. Innovation and you. Philips.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. Dauntless. The all-new Audi Q7.
Welcome back. Now, farmer organizations are calling for agriculture to be fully recognized in the new climate agreement ahead of the critical COP21 gathering in Paris next month. The draft text for a new legally binding climate agreement to replace the Kyoto Protocol was published earlier this month without specific reference to agriculture. The Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions says the agreement will guide a global response to climate change. Now, for more on this, we are joined in studio by Mr. Mike Mlengana, who is the president of the African Farmers Association of South Africa. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, sir.
Just give us an idea, how is climate change affecting the farming community? Not just now that we're in the situation of drought, but things have been changing somewhat over the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Quite a lot, and thank you for inviting me to your studios. The sector has been pretty much affected by drought, by weather conditions quite severely. And both the commercial and the subsistence sector in South Africa have received quite a lot of negative impact from a weather standpoint, with less intervention from external forces, such as the state, for example, especially when it comes to commercial farmers. The subsistence farmers in particular have had their only source of income being destroyed by these fluctuations in weather conditions. They depend on maize, they depend on meat from their animals, and when the drought comes, it affects their very survival. The commercial farm on the other side is affected heavily as they borrow money from the banks to produce. The lack of rains ensures that they cannot return the investment, and consequently they go bankrupt. And really, the future is bleak as we talk right now.
The outlook for rain is also quite bleak for the next couple of months at least. But give us a quick idea. You were going to COP21. We want to talk about this the global idea of how can farmers and agriculture be incorporated in this? What would you like to see happen at the conference?
First, I think it's very important that COP understand that the farmers generally, especially in Africa, in South Africa in particular, we need to be part of the export market, the international market. And consequently, the farmers that are being subsidized in Europe in particular and in the Americas consequently affect competition and therefore kill those farmers who are not receiving subsidies. That's one thing. Secondly, COP will have to understand that agriculture contributes to GDP. Without a recognition of agriculture as a contributor to the gross domestic product, we're going nowhere. So it is a critical component of economic growth. That's why COP should recognize it. And therefore, will then come up with strategies, especially intervention strategies, in situations of weather fluctuations. We have seen these weather fluctuations via what they call El Nino, long ago in Latin America. And no one has recognized that internationally. So COP now will have to integrate agriculture as a key component of economic growth generally in the world, especially farmers that are doing exports.
If agriculture continues to be excluded during this conference and the agreement that hopefully will follow, what do you think the consequences will be?
I think where we are right now is an example of the exclusion of agriculture, and specifically in the African or third world countries, where the farmers are not receiving support, where export markets, as a result of this growth, of these trends, there is poor exports because there is poor production, there is no rainfall. Farmers have borrowed a substantial amount of money. They are going to be bankrupt. The banks are going to need money. So consequently, if the farmers are left alone in these difficult climatic conditions, the consequences for economic growth, especially the contribution of agriculture to that growth, in particular employment, is going to be massive. We've seen here in South Africa in particular, when agriculture has not employed more people, the consequences is huge unemployment.
Why do you think agriculture has not been a key consideration in this conference deal that's on the table?
I've tried to do my research and discuss with my colleagues. I found it a mystery why European countries in particular could not recognize agriculture when their individual states subsidize agriculture. And in their own countries, agriculture is an economic contributor. And that's why we are arguing that let's now take agriculture at the center stage of the debate. And I think there is a realization, in particular, that agriculture contributes to meeting basic needs, in particular in the developing world.
Especially
and therefore arrest poverty, by the way.
Well, we've run out of time, Mr. Mlengana, but we hear your concerns. They are genuine concerns that the farmers have, and let's hope that sanity prevails at COP21 and agriculture gets a special place. Ultimately, half the world is sustaining itself through agriculture. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's the president of the African Farmers Association of South Africa, talking about the real concerns that farming communities and agriculture in general has ahead of COP21 next month, where a climate change deal will be put forward. But let's hope that deal understands the difficulties that farming communities and farmers are faced with. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, as the country continues to face this serious drought, many organizations are searching for innovative solutions, with Agri-SA predicting a 25% decrease in the basket of summer crops. Our food security is definitely under threat. But one company may have found a solution to the crisis: guar farming. The guar legume is an excellent alternative to maize, and it's drought resistant with a yearly crop. Now, to tell us more about this, we are joined from our studios in Cape Town by the CEO of the African Guar Gum Corporation, Marianne Parr. Very good morning to you, Marianne. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce guar to you.
Yes, please do so. Guava farming is not something that we often hear about. What is guava farming, and what could it mean to Southern Africa that's facing such horrific drought conditions right now?
So to be clear, guava is not an alternative to maize or wheat or any of the primary grains. It's more of a rotational crop. In the same way as soya becomes a rotational crop, guava is as well. The big difference is that guava is a water-wise crop. And so let's have a look at a global scale. It's predominantly grown by the Indians and Pakistanis up until for the last 100 years. The major other commercial growing program is in Texas, in the dry areas of the US. And African Guava Gum Corporation is on a drive to see whether we can introduce guava as a good complementary and rotational crop for farmers in southern Africa.
Tell us a little bit more about the guava legume. Is it the answer to growing protein crops here in what is becoming increasingly harsh conditions?
Absolutely. So if I could take a step back, let's talk about why guava. Really, guava is grown to be put into a processing facility to pull out the carbohydrate. And it's the carbohydrate that the world really wants. It's a carbohydrate that is a binding agent. It gets used in everything from ice creams to all the antiretrovirals, cancer drugs, all the way through to the platinum and extraction of platinum. And more importantly, it's used as the primary green solution for the fracking industry. So the opportunity to grow the growing program and feed it into both local business and international business is significant. Coming back, the trick is to start growing it and introducing it as a rotation for maize farmers that have traditionally grown maize on maize, recognizing that you can be growing twice the hectarage of guava for what you would currently be growing in terms of your grain production. And it's a simple crop to grow. We've grown it for the last 3 years in South Africa in terms of our program, but certainly it's been grown historically in Zimbabwe. The Department of Agriculture in Limpopo 15 years ago had a good go at it. But up until now, no one's had the opportunity to connect the dots, making a good, fair program where you've got fair pricing structures from farmers all the way through to the markets, both locally and internationally.
And the appetite for guava right now in South Africa, Marianne, is there an appetite to grow it? Is there political will? Is there an appetite to consume it?
So there is a big interest, and we've been very lucky in a recent relationship that we're developing with Monitor Deloitte to unlock all of those opportunities, because at the moment the multiple organizations that are using guava gum powder are importing it. So there's certainly a significant interest, and we continue to look for parties in South Africa that are interested in buying and sourcing guava gum powder. Similarly, from a farming point of view, farming entities that are in the cattle industry that are looking for good quality, high quality protein, especially in the dairy industry, we're looking for partners in there. And in terms of farmers, we're excited to say that we're looking to grow the program to 10,000 hectares this year, which, though small, has the opportunity to grow to 100,000 and more hectares in the years to come. The partnerships are exciting because we're working with both commercial and developmental farmers, but there's lots more room for farmers to join the program for this year and introduce it as in terms of trial runs, which would hopefully be at least 50 hectares to 100 hectares, but starting to get the program going. It will never reach a scale that, you know, the maize and the wheat and the soya production does in South Africa, and there's no expectation, but it's a good diversification of income for farmers and a good chemical break as it's a legume, and so as able to break that chemical cycle for farmers that are doing monocrops.
Well, Marianne, thank you very much for joining us. We need all the solutions we can get. At the moment, the outlook is certainly not that very good when we look at what the rain outlook itself is like for the next couple of months. That's Marianne Parr. She's the CEO of the African Guava Gum Corporation, coming to us live from Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, moving on, the University of Johannesburg, Nahawu, and other workers' representatives yesterday signed an agreement on the insourcing of outsourced services and the transfer of workers to the university. There have been lots and lots said about it. Of course, a deal is in the offing. It looks like we might see an end to protests now at the university. Lots of views on Twitter as well. Let's have a look at what you've been talking about on Twitter. George talks about in an article this morning, the Vice-Chancellor of UJ agrees to insource workers. But who is he insourcing when they're fired? Ask George Kibler. Then UP uprising. We also sympathise with our elders and workers who unfortunately find themselves in the same situation, talking about UJ protests. When parents are like, I'm walking my child to their UCT exam because then the protesters won't touch us. Lee Candice Dawkin asks a question with a big smile there. UCT shut down too. Safe with mom is the hashtag. Then Laurie Rachel Shawnee says, how is it okay to act like it's fine to go on with exams? UCT needs to step up here. Of course, unhappiness, protests continue ahead of exams. Exams are starting this year around the country at our universities. Let's hope that they'll be able to carry on unabated. Some want exams to be scrapped completely. Let's take a look now at what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page. Now, I can tell you, you'll see that the World Bank has warned that without the right policies to keep the poor safe from extreme weather and rising seas, climate change could drive over 100 million more people into poverty by 2030. Meanwhile, economists have warned that the effect of the current drought on agriculture in South Africa will lead to very high food inflation. The extreme hot and dry conditions have led to at least 3 provinces being declared disaster areas. And you'll see that the African National Congress Youth League in KwaZulu-Natal says it does not want people who hold a different view from them to be purged following the election of the new provincial chairperson. Now, Sihle Zikalala defeated Senzo Mfunu to take the position of provincial chairperson at the 8th ANC KwaZulu-Natal elective conference that ended in Pietermaritzburg yesterday. Now, for more updates on all those stories, go to our Facebook page, type SABC Newsroom in the search bar. Our page will pop up. Like the page, we'll send you all the updates in your live stream all day long. Time for another break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. We've been dealing with a drought here today on Newsroom. South Africa is facing the worst drought since 1982, with more than 2.7 million households facing water shortages across the entire country. 3 South African provinces have been declared as disaster areas now. The province of KwaZulu-Natal was the first. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the province has allocated an injection of more than 400 million rands to alleviate the impact caused by a drought in the province. Now, a number of municipalities are experiencing a serious water shortage. In many communities, taps are simply running dry. The spokesperson of the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Mr. Lennox Mabaso, is in our studio in Durban. A very good morning to you, Mr. Mabaso. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Mr. Hansen, and good morning to the viewers.
Mr. Mabaso, the outlook is not good in KwaZulu-Natal. We understand it's a disaster area, but just give us an update. The last week, what is the picture looking like now in KwaZulu-Natal?
Well, the picture still remains very bleak, as most of our perennial streams and rivers are dry. And as you have quite correctly articulated, the province has been declared a disaster area. So we're still praying for a rain to come, because that's the only solution that we need right now.
Tell us about the communities worst affected, and then tell us what your department is doing to help those communities right now.
Well, today the entire regions of the province, we've got about a total of about 11 districts. Most of them are severely affected by the drought situation. The situation is very dire in various communities. But as the MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal has been, MEC Nomusa Dube-Ncube has been saying, we have a joint operations team that has been set up, comprising of various stakeholders from other government institutions as well as the private sector. We are currently responding to various interventions to try and mitigate the impact of the drought. To date, there has been an amount to the tune of just over 500 million that has been received from various sources. The National Department of Water and Sanitation has allocated about 352 million, which the National Department is using to support municipalities by procuring water tankers, which are interim solutions that can provide water to communities. Secondly, we are using that allocation to make sure that we drill boreholes where we still have a reasonable groundwater available. We are looking at a number of interim solutions that we are currently implementing to ensure that we mitigate the impact of the drought. This allocation, I must indicate that is not enough because our diagnosis of the problem initially revealed that we need an amount to the tune of about 1.6 billion. There has been about 6 million that has been allocated to emerging farmers, because the emerging farmers in the province are almost on their knees with this drought situation. They are losing a lot of their livestock as well.
Water restrictions are being implemented. Just tell us about water restrictions. What kind of areas are you implementing them in? And what's your message then to the people of KwaZulu-Natal with regards to how they use water now?
Well, as MEC Nomusa Dube-Ncube has indicated, various restrictions have been imposed in a number of areas. For instance, you will be aware that the MEC made an announcement that some municipalities, such as Ilembe district, there's water rationing that is now in place, which means that if you were allocated certain number of liters of water a day, that is being reduced. You are going to receive less, and if you exhaust that limit for that particular day, you will have to wait until the following day as one of the options that we are implementing to manage the water. We are actually also putting water washers in many municipalities to ensure that there is no overuse of water, and we are able to manage the limited resources that are available. We have also asked municipalities to impose water restrictions. So it's a combination of options which includes water rationing, water restrictions that are in place in various parts. Our message is that we have undertaken a number of analyses in many areas that have been experiencing droughts before than us, including the USA, the states of California. It has been experiencing drought for 5 years, but their only weapon to this crisis is community participation and community involvement. The role of community can never be overemphasized, because the community to understand that they have a role to play. We are asking them to use water sparingly. We're asking them to conserve water. We're asking them to treat South Africa as a water scarce country, and to understand that we need to take shorter showers. We need to use water sparingly. We must treat every drop of water as if it was the last drop, because we're almost close to empty, and the situation is quite dire, and the role of community is quite critical at this point in time. We say they must #save water, because it's very, very important right now. We're asking students at tertiary institutions, we're asking farmers, we're asking the hospitality industry, everyone to play their part, because it is when we collectively work together that we can be able to mitigate the impact of this crisis. We also ask for prayers. Even if you are a traditional leader, you are a traditional healer, whatever religion that you belong to, we need prayers, because we need rain at this point in time.
Thank you very much for that update. That's Mr. Lennox Mabaso, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal, one of the provinces worst affected. He's asking for prayers. We're asking you, what are you doing to save water? We need to all chip in. We need to take shorter showers. We need to not bath twice a day. We need to use less water. It's critical at this stage. Now, as the South African Weather Service has warned South Africans in the interior of an extremely hot and dry week ahead. We stay with today's focus on the country's water woes. This week, the Institute of Race Relations will release a policy document on the growing water crisis. Now, to tell us more, we're joined in studio by a water expert and the author of this policy document, Dr. Anthony Turton. Very good morning to you, Dr. Turton. Thanks for joining us.
Morning to you and the listeners.
You're releasing this report this week. What is your report going to say, sir?
Well, I think the important thing is that everyone is talking about water volume, water quantity at the moment. You see all your banners and your news headlines, it's always about how full the dams are or how full they aren't. Well, water volume is only one aspect. The really important aspect that I believe we are not actually capturing in the public debate right now is the issue of water quality. Yeah. There's been growing concern in the scientific community certainly for many, many years now about the deteriorating water quality. And I think this is actually the critical issue that we need to start focusing on, not only the water quantity.
What about lawmakers? Can lawmakers do a better job? Could we have done a better job, in your opinion? And is this what you're talking about in your report?
Yes, look, I don't believe it's helpful to point fingers of blame at anybody. That's not going to take us forward. The fact of the matter is we're in a very serious drought. It's arguably one of the worst droughts potentially in decades. Some water affairs people are even talking about the worst drought on record. So we're not quite there yet, but we're on our way there. I think the important thing is that the Minister of Water Affairs at the moment, Nomvula Mokonyane, has, in my view, quite bravely decided to launch two very important initiatives, and I'd like to just support those initiatives now. The first is internal policy reform, evidence-based policy reform, and we hope that this policy document will feed into that, because she wants to make informed decisions based on the broader interest of trading off these different competing interests. But the other important thing, and this I think is really the critical issue, is that she's initiated a fundamental change of the department into the Department of Water and Sanitation, because it's sanitation. It's actually the sewage works, the dysfunctional sewage works in the country. This, in my view, is our major crisis.
We should all come together. That's the general consensus. We should all chip in. The private sector has a huge role to play in this coming together. What can the private sector do, in your opinion, to help alleviate this crisis?
Yes, I'm working very actively with the private sector because I do believe that the private sector, in fact, is a critical partner. I don't believe that government can do it alone. In fact, many governments all over the world are unable to do it alone. So the way we engage with the private sector is an important issue. So I think we're going to start seeing a critical out-of-the-box type of thinking, because conventional thinking has taken us to where we are today. Yeah. We need to move into unconventional thinking.
What are some of those recommendations, those unconventional recommendations that you think you're going to put forward?
Well, the important thing is that what we need to understand is that national government is unable legally or constitutionally to intervene at municipal level. This is a critical problem. It's a constitutional problem. So the problem that we're having is actually at municipal level, particularly around the management of municipal wastewater treatment works. So unless we can get proper, meaningful engagement to repair that problem, supported on the other hand by private sector initiatives to help us come in with technology, with solutions, etc., to help us to basically manage our water, particularly our wastewater treatment plants, more effectively. I see in the next decade a major initiative coming where we're going to start changing our sewage works into water recovery plants. That's really the way we have to go in the future.
What's the implications if we don't?
Well, if we don't, I'm afraid it's a crash and burn scenario. It's a very, very unpleasant and unhappy outcome. So it's almost a no-brainer. We have to do it. The question is, can we bring technology to bear? But more importantly, can we bring those soft institutional type of relationships that make private engagement in the public sector politically palatable? I guess that's one of the big challenges that we face.
We all have to come together. It's not very palatable for anybody at the moment. Dr. Turton, thank you very much for joining us and giving us such a sobering view. But it's nice to know that if we put the right plans in place, you say, it's not as totally bleak a picture then.
No, in fact, it doesn't have to be. If we recycle our total national water resource 1.6 times by 2035, we can have full employment and happy and smiling faces.
Well, thank you. There you go. That's what we like to hear. The good news is we can turn it around, says Dr. Turton. Of course, the Institute of Race Relations here in South Africa will be releasing their report on the water crisis here in South Africa a little bit later this week. We'll look forward to the contents of it. But as you've heard from the man himself, a lot of it will have to do with how do we recycle our water, how do we clean our sewage. Is it a crisis that can be averted? Yes, it is, he says. Now, South Africans in the interior of the country have been warned that this week is going to be extremely hot and very, very dry. The Weather Service has issued a warning of persistently high temperatures in Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga and the northwest. Some areas are expected to soar well above 40 degrees Celsius. Now, Philip Hawkins is here with us. Very good morning to you, Phil. Just give us a quick idea. The outlook this week is a little bit bleak, isn't it?
It's a little bit bleak. It is going to be hot, and it's going to continue to be hot for a good long while. If you are going to be in these, I mean, Eben just said which exactly provinces they are. You have to be very aware, because what a lot of people don't understand is that the temperatures that we're representing on our weather maps are measured in the shade. They're measured without the effects of wind and any other external effects. They are very, very sheltered. If you're going to be in direct sunlight, it's going to feel a lot hotter than that. And people really have a problem with leaving things in the car. And when I say things, I do mean animals, children, and of course any belongings that you leave in the car are going to get damaged. The living things in the car are very, very under risk. You really have to take that into account. Direct sunlight feels a lot warmer than, of course, the temperatures that we represent on our weather maps.
So, Phil, if you say 40 degrees in the shade, does that mean 55 degrees in the sun?
It depends on the intensity of the sun, the time of day, wind speeds, a lot of things like that. But what it really means is that it's going to feel a lot hotter under direct sunlight. If it's 40 degrees in the shade, you're in direct sunlight without the effects of wind, it could easily feel like 55 degrees.
Phil, thank you very much. Just give us a quick weather roundup. Phil Hawkins is here to, well, if we don't have time for a full one, he's going to give us a quick update before the news at the top of the hour.
Just a short one.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's a very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser-known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Are you saying the king must go to jail? You are not royal blood, therefore you are going to serve time on behalf of the king. Where does the public protector stand on this matter? Are you with the marches, for the marches, against the march? If this is your ancestor, it is very much his ancestor as well, because this is the cradle of humankind. Is there God somewhere in your science? Drinking the blood of a person with albinism gives extra magical powers. A man of the cloth is involved here because it would mean that somehow religion is being brought into this part of the myth. What do you say to me?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
It's 10:00 hours Central African time on this Monday, the 9th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404. We are broadcasting live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. You have to stay with us as we bring you only the latest news from here and around the globe. I'm Elvis Preslin. I'll be your host until 12 o'clock. But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. President Jacob Zuma will embark on his first official visit to Germany later today. He will meet with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin tomorrow. The University of Johannesburg, Trade Union HAU and other workers' representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. And MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned following a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to our top story, let's hear from Kendall Makamate. What's happening in the sports news? A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and a hearty good morning to everybody at home as well. It's been a massive weekend. It's going to be a massive week, I can tell you that. And this is what we've got for you in the sports today. The crisis hit IAAF waits with bated breath for a massive doping report. Former BOK captains Wynand Claessens and Divan Serfontein in a campaign to get Heineken Meyer fired. Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns win their derbies to book their spots in the Telkom Knockout Cup final. As you can tell, I've got quite a lot for you in the sports. Back to you, Elvis.
Well, it seems like the Isikotani and the Glamour Boys in the final. Let's start off with our top story. Newly elected ANC chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Zihle Sikalala, says uniting the province ahead of the local government elections will be top of his agenda. He was addressing delegates attending the provincial conference in Pietermaritzburg this weekend. Sikalala beat the KZN Premier, Senzo Mchunu, the outgoing chairman, by 95 votes, in effect creating two centers of power.
And candidate Sihle Sikalala received 700.
The end of a fierce contestation. The challenge now is to unite the province.
The first start is to send a strong message from here, where we are all gathered as delegates, and have a strong message about unity. But after that, we must ensure that all structures of the ANC consolidate themselves, and there is no one who should find himself isolated or victimized because of the outcome of this conference.
The ANC says it's not concerned about the two power centers.
The way that it works is to make sure that the Premier, whoever the Premier is part of the ANC executive, even at an ex-official level, as they've done in other provinces where they aren't directly elected.
First on the agenda for the new leadership is to hold the eThekwini Regional Conference, which has been postponed several times. And with the municipal elections early next year, a united front is essential in this province, the ANC's biggest support base. Lina Mgoboze, SABC News, Pietermaritzburg.
Now, for a discussion on how the new chairman plans to bring unity in the province, we are now joined from Durban Now, Durban Studios by the man himself, the newly elected KwaZulu-Natal African National Congress chairperson, Sihle Sikalala. A very good morning to you, sir, and congratulations, I must say, is in order.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Of course, we believe that we've got a lot of tasks and challenges going forward, but indeed we will do our best to ensure that the African National Congress works effectively and regain its strength in all regions.
How do you feel about this win?
Well, it is not a win of an individual. We always say whenever we are in the elections in the ANC, we get into elections in the ANC because of the democratic character of the African National Congress. And what wins is the ANC. After the elections, all of us must unite behind the elected leadership. But the elected leadership must also create space for those who are not elected to participate in the organizations and in all programs and ensure that the organization is stabilized. So we will be servicing all structures of the ANC, including those who would have not supported us, but we will try to do our best that even themselves, they feel more comfortable in the ANC.
Now, it was a very tight win for yourself. Are you up to the task to bring that unity that we all hear about?
Yes. We are very confident that we will be able to build unity. It is not about an individual in the ANC. The ANC does not depend on an individual person, but it is about a collective leadership. Right now, there is a collective PEC elected in the conference, and that elected PEC will be meeting soon to chart the way forward in as far as uniting the ANC and also being able to ensure that we continue with the work from where the last PEC stopped.
Now, we talk about this unity, but it seems there's two centers of power in your province. How do you aim to deal with that?
Well, we don't know whether there are two centers of power, but we know that the ANC is the only center of power. It is the ANC that develops policies. It is the ANC that develops the programs. The government is expected then to implement those programs and policies, and the ANC should then be able to monitor the implementation by the government.
Mm-hmm. Your biggest task really is to bring about change and to prepare for the elections next year. Do you think that you have the team, the collective team, to make this happen?
The collective PEC, most of them have been in the PEC, in the previous PEC, and a number of them have been in regions and they have been working. And therefore, we've got a collective that is equal to the task. But we must say that there is a growing support of the people to the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. And we'll be consolidating on that and try to move with speed to regain the municipalities that are not in the ANC as yet. There are few municipalities that are under the leadership of opposition parties, and we will want to take those municipalities to the ANC.
Will you be working closely with the former chairman?
Yes, we will be working closely with the former chairman. We have been working together with Comrade Senzo in various capacities. When I was in the Youth League, he was in the ANC. We worked together when I was the deputy secretary and he was the secretary. And we've been working while he was the chair, I was the secretary, and we'll continue working together going forward.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the entire problems in the eThekwini region. Is there such a thing, or is it just rumors out there?
Well, eThekwini in particular is a victim of its own strength, because what causes the delay in the convening of the conference is that a number of branches in eThekwini has huge membership. It is very rare to get a branch with less than 300 members in eThekwini. Many branches start from 400, 700. There is a branch with a membership of more than 1,500. And to convene a branch general meeting, which should elect delegates to a conference, you need people who are at least 50 plus 1 to be there at the same time when you start the meeting. And that has been the problem. And we will be trying to consolidate and ensure activism of the membership of the ANC, get all branches going to finalizing their BGMs and convening the conference.
Now, looking at your plan moving forward, do you think there's still a lot of work to be done, and how are you going to get this all in place before the elections next year?
Well, we are ready for elections. Elections will take place April next year. Already we had started with the campaign. The election structures are in place in all regions. Whether you talk of the regional elections team or you talk of the list committees, we should start the selection of candidates. And we're sure that by December we would have completed the election of candidates. And by now we're going to start working on the ground, door-to-door, visible campaigns of the ANC and other activities. There is nothing that creates doubt about winning the coming local government elections.
Now, Chairman, we try to break down all the challenges from our perspective, from a media perspective, in terms of eThekwini, the unity that you face within the organization, as well as the two centers of power that we talked about earlier. But what do you see as your challenges as the new chairman?
Well, the main challenge facing the ANC, it's what the ANC have characterized in the last conference, the national conference. The first is to build a cadre of the ANC. The ANC should reclaim and restore cadreship. That cadreship should have following attributes. One, it should be a cadreship which is political matured, and that requires political education. But secondly, that cadreship should embrace ideological orientation and be able to advance the policies and the ideologies of the ANC. Thirdly, that cadreship should embrace academic development. We should ensure that as members of the ANC, we develop ourselves academically and also have knowledge. So that is the first thing we will be focusing on, and general revitalization of the organization at a ground level, in particular in the branches. Now, the second is to ensure that we spearhead service delivery. You will know in KwaZulu-Natal, we only took the province in 2004, unlike South Africa, where all provinces got liberated in 1994. But we want to appreciate the work that has been done by previous leaders of the ANC, Sibundebele, the chairperson of the ANC. But before him, there was President Zuma, who worked hard to normalize KwaZulu-Natal, bring stability, and he brought peace, working with other leaders of the ANC as well as leaders of the IFP. And Comrade Sibundebele took that leadership also to a higher level in terms of service delivery. There were 4 MECs. They started being 4 MECs in a cabinet of 10. Only 4 were from the ANC, but they work in a very excellent way, and they took our province to a higher level. Comrade Zweli Mkhize worked as the chair and the premier, and he excelled, he did very well. Comrade Senzo Mchunu have taken that leadership also to a high level, and I believe working with him, we should also take the organization and the government forward. And the key task in as far as government is concerned is to provide basic services to all people of KwaZulu-Natal. We should have a time frame that by this particular time, we should have provided water to all people of KwaZulu-Natal, electricity and sanitation. And thereafter, we should also be dealing with issues of corruption in the state and ensure good governance. Coupled with that is to build the civil service, the civil servant, who have a capacity to run the programs of government in a way that is dedicated and efficient.
Chairman, all the best of luck. You've got a mountain to climb there, but all the best of luck to you and the team.
Thanks a lot, and we want to appreciate the opportunity to engage on these issues. Thank you.
That was the newly elected KwaZulu-Natal African National Congress chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Sihle Zikalala. Now, the University of Johannesburg, Trade Union AHAU, and other worker representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. Under the agreement, which was signed yesterday, cleaning, protection and gardening services will now be insourced. The university's protection services outsourcing contracts will lapse soon, and it says it will not enter into any new contracts. Last week, chaos broke out at the Kingsway campus when students and workers staged a protest. University management says that protesters broke fencing to disturb students studying in the library, leaving taps open and blocking drains. More than 140 students and workers will meanwhile appear in the Brixton Magistrates Court today. They were arrested following the violation of a court order not to disrupt exams. Now, to follow up on that story, scores of students are singing and chanting outside the Johannesburg Magistrates Court in support of their University of Johannesburg counterparts, the cleaning staff who were arrested on Friday. About 141 of them are set to appear in court for contravening an interdict during their protest against outsourcing on the Kingsway campus. The students say they've organized a lot of young people to come and show their support. Our reporter Griselda Lewis is in the thick of things outside the court. A very good morning to you, Griselda, and welcome. Can you paint us a picture of what it is like right now at the Johannesburg Magistrates Court?
Well, a very good morning to Albus. Outside the Johannesburg Magistrates Court, as you can see here behind me, scores of students who are here to support those who were arrested on Friday at the University of Johannesburg's Auckland Park campus. Of course, you would recall that students and cleaners were not allowed to be within 500 meters of the university as per a court interdict that the employers got. And once they marched on the University of Johannesburg's Auckland Park campus, they were arrested by police and, of course, released much later. But many of these students here saying they're here to support those who were arrested on Friday, and essentially they want the University of Johannesburg still. They say the University of Johannesburg has employed tactics to try and intimidate them, to stop them from protesting. Just to go a bit back as well, Elvis, to how we landed up here this morning, is that you would know that students at the University of Johannesburg as well as cleaners were protesting against, if I could just get this gentleman out of our shot here at the moment, sorry, apologize, this is live television, we're expecting quite a number of people to walk in front of us, but just to give you an idea of where we come from with this, Albus, is that students and workers from the University of Johannesburg were essentially demanding that there should not be a registration fee next year, and they were calling as well, workers were calling for an end to outsourcing. So they're saying they're essentially here to support those who've been arrested inside court. We understand that the docket has just arrived. That is what the delay was. We were expecting proceedings to get underway at 9 o'clock this morning, but that docket has just arrived. We understand the charges that these workers and students are facing relate to illegal gathering, public violence, as well as contravening a court interdict. Let's chat now to the president of the convocation at the University of Johannesburg, Mbali Mkhonto. Mbali, thank you very much for your time this morning. You've amassed quite a number of people to come and support the workers and students that were arrested on Friday. What is your message going forward? Because the sense that we're getting is that once these proceedings are done, the protest itself is not over.
Yeah, what we are here for is to support these demonstrators, simply because we believe that they have legitimate issues that they are raising, and management should take them very seriously. However, we are here to say to them, perhaps it is best they concentrate on these exams right now, then we can say to them after, we can deal with the issues, simply because they are legitimate. And we really are encouraging the management to really not use any form of intimidation like they are right now. Now they are acting like cowards. They are taking our mothers to prison, which is very unfortunate, simply because you cannot send bouncers to a protest. Such people are not trained for any public management, which they should have sent police force, not bouncers to hit these people. So what we are calling for, definitely, we have black associates, black academics said they are in support of one thing, that the handling of this matter was very wrong. As to workers or students were striking illegally, we are not here to entertain that. We are saying to them, perhaps they must go back to exams, but the handling of the matter, perhaps management must begin to realize that dictatorship cannot work at this institution.
Is there any idea at this point how many of these students have missed their exams? I know inside court a few minutes ago, the lawyers representing those who were arrested were asking some of the students to take down the names of those who did not write their exams. There were exams on Friday when the arrest took place. There were exams on Saturday as well as exams this morning. Any indication whatsoever?
My understanding is that there are almost less than 70 of those that are affected by the exams. But however, the main focus should be on these workers. These workers, they are raising legitimate issues that if not entertained now, we cannot speak about any investigation now. The problem exists. They must solve it now. Why must we have an investigation if the problem exists? So what I'm saying to you is that perhaps we must begin to really carefully look at what the Minister of Higher Education is suggesting. This institutional autonomy, it has a minimal advantage to some of the workers because council do as they please. We've been raising legitimate issues with council. They are not entertaining it. The Vice-Chancellor must begin to realize that he must run the institution with people. Actually, we want to begin to entertain his term of office because it's beyond 10 years now.
So what's the way forward? After this court, we understand that students as well as cleaners will return to the University of Johannesburg and continue their protest. How true is that?
No, what we are pleading with them, we are leaders. We are not leaders without a vision. We are leaders, but we are saying to them, we understand their frustration. But for now, we are asking them, and we've been pleading with some of them, they do understand, that let us focus on the exams. And actually, this issue is not yet over, because like I'm saying to you, we were with the black academics right now, black associates, they agree on one thing. Perhaps it is time the Vice-Chancellor produced to us what he has achieved in the past 10 years, transformation. Because you cannot just extend your office as you please simply because the council members are your friends. We are going to fight whether, and actually we are calling again to say those that have been suspended for such reasons, they must have their suspension lifted simply because the bouncers were not supposed to be at the institution. If there is no dictatorship, you will be able to do that.
All right, Mbali Mkhonto, who is the president of the UJ Convocation, thank you very much for your time there. As you can see, Elvis, the protesting, the support continues here outside the Johannesburg Magistrates Court. As you heard from Mbali Mkhonto, about 70 students are affected by the strike. They were not able to write their exams on Friday as well as on Saturday. What we also know from the lawyers who are representing those who were arrested on Friday, they also want to challenge the suspension of some of those students, those who were suspended, including the president of the SRC, also wanting to challenge as well the dismissal of some of the workers who were dismissed after they'd been arrested and told that they were not allowed to participate in this protest. So from our understanding at this point, the charges that they are facing relate to public violence as well as contravening that court order that said that they should not protest within 500 meters of the university, as well as an illegal gathering. We're expecting proceedings to get underway at 11 o'clock this morning. We understand that the docket has just arrived.
Zelda, thank you so much for that update. We'll come back to you a little bit later to update us on the proceedings there. But let's now go to Cape Town, where protesters are burning tyres at the University of Cape Town, and several barricades have been placed on the campus. Police are also on the scene. The UCT spokesperson, Pat Lucas, says that exams will continue. The university reopened the option to students to defer end-of-year examinations to next year. The students have until November the 27th to make their decision. Now, this follows a protest a week ago where students from the university, supported by outsourced workers outside Parliament, they want free education, an end to outsourcing. However, the students' leader, Alex Holt, says they will continue their action until their demands are met. We'll also keep you updated on that story as it unfolds as they be marching to Parliament this morning, we believe. Cellular network operator MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Safiso Dabengwa, has resigned. The company has appointed its executive chairperson, Phuthuma Nhleko, to act as the Dabengwa's position, that is. His resignation follows a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. Now this after the company's failure to deregister illegal SIM cards. Last week, the South African government expressed concern on the issue. A ministerial task team has found that the Health Professions Council of South Africa, HPCSA, which regulates the education, training, re-registration and practice of health professionals, to be in a state of multi-system organizational dysfunction. Now, the team has recommended that an interim executive management team be appointed and that the chief executive, the CEO, the head of legal services are all unfit for their jobs. They also suggested that appropriate disciplinary and incapacity proceedings against them be instituted along with possible suspensions. Meanwhile, the South African Medical Association, or SAMA, said its members have experienced significant frustrations in their interaction with the Health Professions Council of South Africa at all levels, and have repeatedly attempted to address these concerns with the authorities to no avail. Now, to discuss this, we are joined in studio by the South African Medical Association, SAMA Strategic Accounts Manager, Julian Botha. Julian, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
Now, first and foremost, your reaction to the findings by the Ministerial Task Team and the Minister's announcement last week.
I think the reactions of the South African Medical Association is that almost we told you so. This is what we have been saying for quite some time, and so basically it's a question of what we expected, what we had hoped that the Ministerial Task Team would have in their findings. So yes, we are heartened by what was found by the task team and the report thereof.
Now, before we get into the challenges that you had to face working with the with the association, as the South African Medical Association, your core business, what is it? Because if we turn to the page where the Health Professional Council involved, they are doing registration and training. What is your core business, and how do you then work with the Health Professions Council?
Thank you. The South African Medical Association has been around in one form or another since 1927. It is a voluntary association for medical practitioners. We're a non-statutory body. We represent the interests of medical practitioners in both the public and the private sector. In the public sector, we operate as a registered trade union, whereas in the public sector, we are a non-profit company, a voluntary association. We deal with procedural coding, basically members' interests. We act as an advocacy group, basically to, if you will, represent the interest of doctors, but also indirectly the interests of the health of the nation.
Now, talk to me about the challenges that you have experienced with the Health Professions Council.
Well, I'm ideally situated because I spent a number of years working with SAMA and being at the coalface in the trenches with our struggles with the Health Professions Council. Essentially, the Health Professions Council is the statutory council from whom all medical practitioners must obtain registration in order to practice in South Africa. Problems include the issues of registration. As a medical student, you must first go through your studies, then you go through internship, then community service, and then finally to be registered as a medical practitioner. There are significant administrative delays in registration, particularly when you're changing from one category to the other, and more specifically in respect of community service doctors. Without registration, it is illegal to practice in South Africa. A community service doctor finishes their community service here and then has to wait sometimes 3-4 months before the registration as a medical practitioner is finalized. So therefore, it is a sort of gap where these people are unable to earn an income. Other issues involve disciplinary matters, where the HPCSA is responsible for protecting the public and guiding the profession, and where members of the public have difficulty or complaints against a medical practitioner, they will end up having these disciplinary inquiries, which can drag on for years.
Now, Julian, just briefly, 15 seconds, the solution to all of this?
Well, in 15 seconds, that would be difficult to state. I think an overhaul of the administrative functioning of the HPCSA is absolutely essential. It needs to be lean, mean, and efficient.
Thank you so much for your time, Julian.
Thank you.
Joining us here. That was the South African Medical Association SAMA chairperson. That was Julian Botha, the Strategic Accounts Manager, here in studio with us. Thank you so much for your time. Right now, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports field.
Thank you very much, Elvis. A hearty good morning to you and welcome back. I am Kendall Makhamate with your sports. Now, top of our stories for this morning, the head of World Athletics, Sebastian Coe, says he faces a long battle to rebuild trust in the sport after the latest allegations of bribery, extortion and doping cover-ups. Coe was elected president of the International Association of Athletics Federations, the IAAF, in August on a manifesto promising reform. Now, his statement came after French authorities placed his long-serving predecessor, Lamine Diack, under formal investigation on suspicion of corruption and money laundering. A report by the World Anti-Doping Agency today is set to deepen the athletic scandal that, according to one of the document's authors, eclipses even the alleged corruption at soccer's governing body FIFA. The WADA report is expected to focus on allegations that Russian athletics authorities have been covering up positive doping cases as well as extorting money from leading athletes in return for concealing the fact that they'd failed drugs tests. And in other sports news, 2 former Springbok captains are drumming up support to bring down Springbok coach Hanneke Meyer. Wynand Klaasen and Divan Serfontein have circulated a hard-hitting letter under the heading Hanneke must fall amongst former Springboks. The 2 former Springbok captains are drumming up support to bring down this coach. Wynand Klaasen and Divan Serfontein have actually been writing this letter, and they've actually insisted that he must fall. Now, they have also called for concerted action to ensure that Meyer's 4-year contract is not renewed next month. The pair say South Africans should stand together to ensure they can again be proud of the Springbok rugby and the players get the opportunities to develop. Klaasen and Serfontein say Meyer has been blaming players' skills as the reason for the World Cup disaster. However, they say the team has not been coached properly. Now, of course, there have been a lot of comments being bandied about on social media. Let's see what you've been saying on social media under the Hanneke must fall hashtag. First up, we've got a JDW, Oyadir Via. Hanneke deserves all this criticism. He had 4 years to develop a representative, competitive squad. He failed. No more. And Leone from Pletzen says, doesn't agree with the Hanneke must fall. I actually think Hanneke must rise. That's Leone giving Hanneke a positive boost there. And I think you're one of the lone voices, South African heroes. We support former Test captains Wynand Klaasen and Divan Serfontein in their call for Hanneke. For Meyer must fall, Hanneke must fall, Boks need a new game plan. Now, that's been one of the criticisms, isn't it? That they didn't have a game plan to go into the World Cup with. Sean Krieger, yes, Hanneke must fall. Incompetence cannot be rewarded. Quite interesting, the comments that are coming out on social media. Yes, definitely not positive. And we do hope that we get resolution and we know what's happening. As you all know, it's going to be announced in December whether he stays on as rugby coach for the Springboks or not. Now, in other sports news, the country's under-20 women's soccer team, Basetsana, has missed out on qualification for the 2016 FIFA Women's Under-20 World Cup. They lost 3-1 on aggregate after a 1-0 loss in the second leg of their qualifier to Nigeria's Falconets.
Basetsana needed to win with a 2-goal margin to secure a spot to the 2016 FIFA Under-20 World Cup after losing 2-1 in the first leg a fortnight ago. They were keen to shoot from a distance with this attempt by Gabriela Salgado in the 15th minute, missing the target. Instead, it was the Falconets who scored a minute later, with Chinwendu Ihuzio finding the back of the net after poor defending by the South Africans. Thembi Kgatlana had a chance to pull one back for Basetsana in the 24th minute, but shot wide after beating 2 Nigerian players. Keeper Sandra Chichi used her leg to deny Linda Mutlalo a goal in the 31st minute. The South Africans were denied a goal once again 4 minutes into the second half, with the Falconets defending well. Chichi denied Kgatlana a goal in the 78th minute of the game. It was a case of so near and yet so far for Basetsana. The team had beaten Botswana and Zambia in the earlier rounds of the qualifiers, only for their World Cup hopes to be dashed by the Falconets. Pesingatlo, SABC News.
Now, in other big news from the weekend, Mamelodi Sundowns will meet Soweto Giants, Kaizer Chiefs in the Telkom Knockout Cup final. Sundowns beat SuperSport United 3-1 in the Tshwane Derby to book a spot in the final. Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs beat rivals Orlando Pirates on penalties after the match ended goalless in extra time. Amakosi will meet Sundowns in the final of the Telkom Knockout Cup on the 16th of December. That's Reconciliation Day. And the Proteas players JP Dumini and Mone Mokol are expected to be fit for the second test against India starting this coming Saturday. However, there's concern over the fitness of leading paceman Dale Steyn. He was unable to bowl in the second innings of the first test, which the Proteas lost by 108 runs. And obviously, staying with cricket news, Australia beat New Zealand by 208 runs in the first test at the Gabba this morning to go 1-up in the 3-match series. The Australians dismissed the Kiwis for 295 as they chased an improbable 504 runs for victory. At stumps last night, the Black Caps were 142 off 3 for 53 overs, chasing 504 runs for victory. When play resumed earlier this morning, the Australians claimed the 7 remaining wickets to take the lead in the 3-test series. David Warner was named man of the match for his double centuries. Australia now head to Perth for the Friday's second test, with the Kiwis facing a mounting injury toll. And finally, world number one Novak Djokovic won a record 4th title at the Paris Masters tennis tournament. Scotland's Andy Murray was unable to match the sensational Serb. Djokovic crushed Murray 6-2, 6-4 in 1 hour and 30 minutes, winning his 10th title of the season and becoming the first player to ever win 6 Masters 1000s in one season.
Bidding for his 10th title of the season, Djokovic had a strong start. The top seed won 8 consecutive points to break Murray's serve in the 3rd game of the opening set, while Murray piled on the unforced errors, 19 in the opening set alone. Djokovic got the double break to lead 5-2 and was in firm control. He served out the opener 6-2.
Too good so far.
The Serb got the early break of serve to lead 2-1 in the 2nd set, but Murray hit back. Djokovic, who won 3 Grand Slam titles this year, reasserted his authority in the 7th game and closed out the match with ease. The final score 6-2, 6-4.
Djokovic defends, he's the champion once more in Paris, a record 4th title here in Bercy.
Renette van Rensburg, SABC News.
And that's it from the sports desk. We're going to take a short break, but stay close because Evan Janssen is staying with more news.
News from the SABC's online news services. On our website, breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Still Newsroom. Time for us to, work, put in the earpiece here and listen to what they say to me anyhow. Time for us to shift our focus to what's happening on the African continent. And, this morning we're going to start with MTN. Now, the company has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned. The company has appointed the executive chairperson, Phuthuma Nhleko, to act in Dabengwa's position. This comes after MTN Nigeria was fined 71 billion rand for not registering SIM card holders. Dabengwa's resignation came as the deadline to pay the penalty nears. MTN was given until the 16th of November to pay the fine, which relates to the disconnection of 5.1 million subscribers and is based on a charge of 200,000 naira for unregistered customers. Then Rwandan President Paul Kagame has called for Burundi to avoid a repeat of the 1994 ethnic violence. Yesterday, Kagame presented an emotional speech which went viral on social media. Now, at least 200 people have died and tens of thousands have fled Burundi due to months of violence. This comes after President Pierre Nkurunziza won a controversial 3rd term in office. International concerns are growing as the deadline for Burundians to hand over illegal firearms ends today. The Botswana High Court will today hear arguments in the case between President Ian Khama and the Law Society of Botswana. This comes after heads of state allegedly interfered in the judiciary. Khama is refusing to appoint veteran attorney Ompometse Mutumise as the judge of the High Court. This despite the Judicial Service Commission recommending him. The Law Society is now challenging the powers that Ian Khama has in appointing judges, calling his decision unconstitutional. Russia has flown home 11,000 of its citizens from Egypt. They have been stranded there after Moscow cancelled flight because of concerns Last week's airline disaster in the Sinai may have been caused by a bomb. A memorial service was held at the weekend for the 224 victims in St. Petersburg. The Russian aircraft crashed in the Sinai Peninsula, killing all 224 on board. Now, the dream of an AU standby force has become a reality when soldiers from different parts of the continent completed a military exercise. More than 5,000 soldiers took part in the exercise held at the Lohatla Combat Training Centre near Postmasburg in the Northern Cape, here in South Africa. Men and women from different parts of the continent gathered to demonstrate the continent's capability. The group consists of 3 different units: military, police and peacekeepers. They will be deployed where there is conflict on the continent. The AU says the existing African capacity for immediate response will now work jointly with the African Standby Force. The force is expected to be operational by December of this year. The first deployment will be a peacekeeping mission that is in January of 2016. President Jacob Zuma has meanwhile called on African Union member states to avail resources required to sustain the African Standby Force. The president was speaking at the ceremony to mark the end of the military exercises at Lohatla.
Is that some countries on our beloved continent are still experiencing conflict, strife, and war. The people of the Central African Republic, South Sudan, Mali, Libya, Somalia, and Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo still live in the hope of achieving peace. We therefore have a duty as the leadership of the continent to assist sister countries to achieve peace.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame yesterday called for Burundi to avoid a repeat of ethnic violence. Yesterday, Kagame presented an emotional speech highlighting the importance of not repeating the mistakes of the past. About 800,000 people, most of them Tutsis and moderate Hutus, were massacred before rebel forces led by Kagame ended the genocide in Rwanda in 1994. Burundi is about 85% Hutu with 14% Tutsis. This year, at least 200 people have died in violent conflicts and around 200,000 have fled the country since April. International communities have raised concerns that the country could be slipping back into civil war, and aid organizations may issue a conflict alert. Now, joining us in studio from the Afro-Middle East Center is researcher and African specialist Aisha Kaji. A very good morning to you, Aisha. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
This weekend was another bloody weekend in Burundi.
Absolutely.
Just give us a quick update of what kind of reports have you heard with regards to attacks that have been going on there?
Well, at least 9 people have been killed in a single attack on a bar in a district which is known to be largely an opposition stronghold, as house-to-house searches began for so-called illegal firearms by the police. There have been, however, reports that many of these searches have turned violent, that police have shot people in the legs and in the upper limbs, etc. And so there is concern that, you know, particularly in this bar, people from outside who were drinking outside were brought in, told to lie down on the floor and shot execution style. So, you know, it's obvious that this situation is escalating. Also, the language that is being used in recent weeks, particularly last week by some senior members of government, is very worrying. The euphemisms used bear resemblance to the kind of coded language that was used in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Yeah.
I'll give you one example, even. The president of Burundi's Senate said just 2 or 3 days ago that at present people are shooting people in the leg. But when we tell them to go to work, quote unquote work, then you will see, and then you should not come to us crying. Now that word work was used in the Rwandan genocide as a kill code.
Yes.
And Burundians understand this type of coded language.
Yes, it's the historical context that one would have to understand in the escalating conflict that you're calling it now. But would it be too simplistic to say that Burundi is slipping back into civil war because of the third term that we've seen almost forced upon the rest of the continent?
Well, I think until about 2 years ago, Burundi was actually doing pretty well. You know, the population was fairly happy with its government. It was still a very poor country in many respects, largely underdeveloped in rural areas, etc. And of course, there have been reports, even for the past 5 years, that the youth wing of the ruling party, the youth militia of the ruling party, the Imbonerakure, as it's called, has terrorized villages and chiefs in rural areas into voting for the ruling party. But other than that, we haven't seen much of a flare-up of the type that we saw prior to 2005.
Yeah.
So it's been relatively stable. And then in April this year, when Mr. Nkurunziza decided he was going for a third term, when the deputy president of the Constitutional Court had to flee for his life because he didn't agree with that decision, it wasn't a unanimous decision that he could contest a third term. Since then, people have been fleeing. As you said in your report, almost 200,000 have left the country, about 200 killed just in recent weeks.
Yeah.
So you've got a situation now where, because of that third term and the fear that Mr. Nkurunziza and the elites that surround him will continue to loot the treasury, which they have been doing, and will continue to hold power perhaps for life. And people are getting very restless about this and wanting to contest it. It's normal, it's natural.
Yeah.
People want, as they say in Kenya, their turn at the trough.
Absolutely. Well, it's all too familiar. Let's talk about today, though. Today is the deadline for handing over all illegal firearms in Burundi. Do you see that happening? Is this a genuine concern to curb the violence, or is there a mistrust that this might be another power strategy by those in power?
Absolutely, there's a lot of mistrust around it. And while the government is framing it as being an effort to contain what they call terrorism within the country, it's happened in a context of decreasing freedom of expression, where many international news outlets, for example, have been closed down. Local journalists have been attacked. Human rights defenders have been attacked. Their families. The son of a prominent human rights activist was killed this weekend, etc. So in that context, even, I don't think it can be said that's an attempt to curb terrorism. And also in the context of the fact that the first searches have happened in districts known to be opposition strongholds. That says that the government is more concerned with disarming its opponents than with disarming civilians generally.
You talk about the language of this conflict that is changing, that has changed, and that civil war is staring the nation in the face. Can it be avoided? What if Nkurunziza said tomorrow that he would step down, for instance? Would that stop this escalation in violence, and could that even happen?
Certainly, I think it would stop the escalation in violence. I think that if Nkurunziza was a little more open to sharing power with his opponents, even, that the violence would see a dramatic decrease. But while I would hesitate to say the country is going back into civil war, certainly the situation is very, very serious right now, and it ought to be monitored closely. And because it's not a country with a huge amount of resources, the international media, of course, don't pay it that much attention.
That is certainly correct. Tell me quickly about the region, though. We saw Kenya come out yesterday. They raised concerns about the prosperity of the entire region if Burundi falls back into civil war. What would this conflict mean for the region, and how do you think surrounding countries will be affected?
Well, already surrounding countries have been affected in that many of them have been accepting refugees from Burundi since the escalations began in April. Many of those, for example, are currently in Tanzania, across the border in Tanzania, across the river in Tanzania, as it were. And that puts pressure on the Tanzanian government to basically see to the well-being of these refugees, to house them, shelter them, provide services to them, which in turn then begins to cause resentment amongst local Tanzanians. And the flare-up of xenophobia, while it hasn't happened in any marked way thus far, is one of the factors that could be an outcome of this situation.
Any hopes of external forces stepping into the breach and making making a difference?
Well, when you were talking about the African Standby Force recently, I was thinking to myself, well, perhaps their first deployment may be in Burundi. So certainly a peacekeeping mission could be of some value in, raising the decreasing the level of tension that's currently been so severely raised. But it would also have to be a peacekeeping force with a very definite mission and mandate, and also one, of course, that the current Burundian government would allow.
That's
into
the question. Would Nkurunziza allow them in?
Right now, I would say he's probably banking on being able to disarm as many of his opponents, or scare as many of his opponents into leaving, if not disarming them. And that puts this current regime on a high. So I would say that unlikely unless the situation escalates to such a level that the AU or the East African community steps in and says, listen, you've got to do this.
Well, we've run out of time. I thank you. The concerning thing is that every genocide in the history of mankind has been preceded by civilian disarmament. Those are the facts. So
absolutely.
Thank you for
and
joining
also
us.
I think that we shouldn't underestimate the impact that incitement to violence through coded language and hate speech can have.
Aisha, thank you very much for joining us, giving us real insight into what the situation is in Burundi. It is like a fire keg waiting to explode. Thank you for joining us this morning. Afro-Middle East Center researcher Aisha Kayaji is also an expert on Burundi. She lived there for many, many years. Now, we move on to Sierra Leone. Now, the country has been declared free of Ebola by the World Health Organization. The WHO says Sierra Leone will now enter a 90-day period of what it calls enhanced surveillance. The country has gone 42 days without any new cases.
The West African nation saw nearly 4,000 people lose their lives from the disease.
Sierra Leone marks the end of the Ebola outbreak. We give thanks to Almighty God, and I stand here humbled by the dedication of the Ebola response workers, whose heroism is without parallel in the history of our country.
The Ebola outbreak has severely affected people, families, the health system, the economy, and social structures. All need to recover and to heal. WHO is confident that the government of Sierra Leone, together with its national and international partners, will use this foundation now in place: dedicated and trained health workers, systems for alert and information management, community engagement, and care for people.
Ebola killed more than 11,300 people in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea since March 2014. At the height of the epidemic, authorities in Sierra Leone and Liberia ordered people to stay indoors for days at a time in an attempt to identify new cases and slow the disease spread.
We were attacked by a vicious enemy, which we knew very little about at the time of the attack. Businesses shut down, airlines cancelled flights to our country. Many left for fear that we may not get out of this. But we knew we had nowhere to go, and with the help from a few friends from the international community, we stood up and faced the enemy head-on.
In Freetown, Sierra Leone's capital, thousands of people gathered for a candlelight vigil to remember the 200 health workers who died. Residents also celebrated the end of the epidemic, which forced schools to close, overwhelmed healthcare systems, and hurt the local economy. Liberia was declared Ebola-free in September. Guinea is still treating a handful of cases.
The Lesotho government delegation has thanked South Africa for the role it played in restoring peace and stability in the kingdom following the recent political instability there. The delegation is being hosted by the Minister in the Presidency, Sir Jeff Khadebe, in Pretoria. The Basotho delegation wants to learn more about government planning and evaluation systems from South Africa.
bilateral relations. Lesotho has described South Africa as a good neighbor state, economically and in the political front. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa was a key mediator in Lesotho's recent political troubles.
They intervened when there was political tensions in the country, and up to date, the Deputy President is still the facilitator. Really, the work which we very much appreciate as the country, as the government, and as Lesotho.
Both countries have described their relationship as historic.
Our ties are historical. Lesotho was one of those countries that gave sanctuary to many of our freedom fighters in order for us to defeat the system of apartheid.
But for now, the focus is sharing information on government planning, monitoring and evaluation systems.
Going forward, we need to ensure that we synergize our plans, our monitoring systems, so that we can benefit from each other's experiences.
South Africa remains Lesotho's biggest trading partner. The meeting is expected to conclude on Monday. Sipho Sturman, SABC News, Pretoria.
Well, time enough for us to wrap our look at what's happening on the African continent by taking a look at the front pages from around Africa. We start in Swaziland. The Swaziland Observer reports that the Supreme Court judge there, Bheki Mapalala, has been confirmed as Chief Justice of the Kingdom of Swaziland, making him the first indigenous Swazi national to head the judiciary in that country. Then we move to Namibia. The Namibian says the Confederation of Namibian Fishing Association, which represents Namibia's fishing sector and employs over 14,000 people, says it will not engage unrecognized unions in the country. Then finally, in Nigeria, This Day reports that a suspected Boko Haram member on the list of the most wanted 100 terrorists whose photographs and names were released recently by the military was arrested yesterday at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in the country. Those are the newspapers from around the continent, or just a couple of the newspapers around the continent. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back in about 3 minutes' time, we'll be back with a complete news update at the top of the hour with Elvis Presley. Don't go away. We'll see you then.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Makamelo Sekhontse, one strong woman who said no to hunger. She never allowed circumstances to pull her down. At daybreak, she is up and running in the streets of Johannesburg to make her living. After 12 hours of hard work, she goes back home being able to put food on the table. Join me, Bule Molebatsi, on your show about those who take on and conquer life challenges every Saturday at 5:30.
News at 1 touches the nerve of business locally and abroad.
Find out how a move in the economy affects you daily. We bring to you all stock markets information across the globe daily. We deliver the latest news and sport news of the day. Make a date with lunchtime news at 1 daily.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumana Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Monday, the 9th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404. We are broadcasting live from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. You have to stay with us as we bring you the latest news from here and abroad. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be your host until 12. But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. President Jacob Zuma will embark on his first official visit to Germany later today. He will meet with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin tomorrow. The University of Johannesburg, Trade Union NAHAU and other workers' representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. And MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned following a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. Those are all your headlines, but first, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning.
Good morning, Elvis. It's been a very big day so far already in sports. It's only Monday, but it's been big. In fact, good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Now, the crisis hit IAAF waits with bated breath for a massive doping report. Former Bok captains Wynand Claessens and Devon Serfontein in a campaign to get Heineken Meyer fired. Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns win their derbies to book their spots in the Telkom knockout final.
In the back of the net. He waited for the cross and then he got in there and put the ball into the back of the net.
All right, now that's what we've got for you in the sports. Make sure you stick around for around about 11:30 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's take a look at your top story this hour. President Jacob Zuma will embark on his first official visit to Germany later today. He will meet with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin tomorrow. That visit comes as the two countries have developed into major trading partners.
The German flag has flown over a reunited Germany for 25 years now. In that time, the country has emerged to become the de facto leader of Europe. When South African President Jacob Zuma arrives here on Monday, he will have the chance to personally assess this key relationship for his country.
I think it indicates that South Africa regards Germany as a very important partner.
South Africa is Germany's biggest trading partner in Africa, and there are over 600 German companies invested in the country.
We see this upcoming presidential visit to Germany as an opportunity for a big push forward, as there are a number of investment opportunities that are discussed by German companies. That could be something like a big package after Zuma is heading back to South Africa.
One firm with important ties to South Africa is the German automaker Volkswagen, which produces about 120,000 vehicles a year at its plant on the Eastern Cape. While VW's emissions scandal has dominated the headlines, there's been no signs so far that that could impact the company's business in South Africa.
Just a few days before the scandal got public, the investment into South Africa was announced by Volkswagen, and I think they have no reason to review their plans.
Some German business leaders, though, have worried that they've lost some protection since the suspension of a bilateral investment treaty 2 years ago. Behind me here is the office of German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and it will be the site of the meeting between these two world leaders whose countries have undergone such dramatic shifts over the past 20 years. What they discuss on Tuesday could go a long way towards shaping relations between these two nations for the next 20. Ira Spitzer, SABC News, Berlin.
Newly elected ANC chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Zihle Sikalala, says uniting the province ahead of the local government elections will be top of his agenda. Early on, we spoke to the incoming chairperson who beat the KZN Premier, Senzo Mchunu, the outgoing chairman, by 95 votes at the ANC KZN Elective Congress.
That we will be able to build unity. It is not about an individual in the ANC. The ANC does not depend on an individual person, but it is about a collective leadership. Right now, there is a collective PEC elected in the conference, and that elected PEC will be meeting soon to chart the way forward in as far as uniting the ANC and also being able to ensure that we continue with the work from where the last PEC stopped.
Now, we talk about this unity, but it seems there's two centers of power in your province. How do you aim to deal with that?
Well, we don't know whether there are two centers of power, but we know that the ANC is the only center of power. It is the ANC that develops policies. It is the ANC that develops the programs. The government is expected then to implement those programs and policies, and the ANC should then be able to monitor the implementation by the government. But we must say that there is a growing support of the people to the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, and we'll be consolidating on that and try to move with speed to regain the municipalities that are not in the ANC as yet. There are few municipalities that are under the leadership of opposition parties, and we want to take those municipalities to the ANC.
Will you be working closely with the former chairman?
Yes, we will be working closely with the former chairman. We have been working together with Comrade Senzo in various capacities. When I was in the Youth League, he was in the ANC. We worked together when I was the deputy secretary and he was the secretary. And we've been working while he was the chair, I was the secretary, and we'll continue working together going forward.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the entire problems in the eThekwini region. Is there such a thing, or is it just rumors out there?
Well, eThekwini in particular is a victim of its own strength, because what causes the delay in the convening of the conference is that a number of branches in eThekwini has huge membership. It is very rare to get a branch with less than 300 members in eThekwini. Many branches start from 400, 700. There is a branch with a membership of more than 1,500. And to convene a branch general meeting, which should elect delegates to a conference, you need people who are at least 50 plus 1 to be there at the same time when you start the meeting. And that has been the problem. And we will be trying to consolidate and ensure activism of the membership of the ANC, get all branches going to finalizing their BGMs and convening the conference.
The University of Johannesburg, Trade Union NAHAU and other worker representatives have signed an agreement on the insourcing of services at the university. Under the new agreement, which was signed yesterday, cleaning, protection and gardening services will now be insourced. The university's protection services outsourcing contract will lapse soon, and it says it will not enter into any new contract. Last week, chaos broke out at the Kingsway campus when students and workers staged a protest. University management says protesters broke fencing to disturb students studying in the library, leaving taps open and blocking drains. More than 140 students and workers will meanwhile appear in the Brixton Magistrates Court this morning. They were arrested following the violation of a court order not to disrupt exams. And we'll try to update you on that story as it proceeds today. Now, protesters are burning tyres at the University of Cape Town, and several barricades have been placed on the campus. Police are also on the scene. UCT spokesperson Pat Lucas says exams will continue. The university reopened the option to students to defer end-of-year examinations to next year. Students have until November the 27th to make that decision. This follows a protest a week ago of students from the university, supported by outsourced workers outside Parliament. They want free education and an end to outsourcing. However, student leader Alex Hotz says that they will continue their action until their demands are met. MTN has confirmed that its group CEO, Sifiso Dabengwa, has resigned. The company has appointed its executive chairperson, Phuthuma Nhleko, to act in Dabengwa's position. Dabengwa's resignation follows a scandal in which Nigerian authorities imposed a more than 70 billion rand fine on the MTN group. This after the company's failure to deregister illegal SIM cards. Last week, the South African government expressed concern on the issue. Now, there is excitement that has been high among the people of Myanmar following the country's first free election in 25 years. The poll is widely seen as the biggest step yet in Myanmar's journey to democracy from dictatorship. Thousands of League for Democracy supporters filled the streets around the party's headquarters in Yangon soon after the polls closed. The NLD is the favorite in most parts of Myanmar due to its iconic leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, she is barred from becoming president, but has said she would lead the country if her party wins, without elaborating on how this would be possible. Vote counting is underway, but full results are not expected for several days. Now, that's your news for now. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
We make sure to bring you exciting entertainment news on Trends. Ayanda, a vibrant South African movie told with love, passion and exceptional acting.
For Ayanda, at least, it says that we are heading in the right direction. South African films are growing and they are heading in the right direction to become international movies.
The Urban Art Festival artists brought back colour to old buildings of Johannesburg with their spray cans.
Festival to promote graffiti in Johannesburg and also to promote the Johannesburg inner city. But it brings a number of international artists out, and then they paint with our local artists and they paint throughout the inner city.
We even give you tips on making healthy and fruity cocktails.
Low carbs, fun cocktails for the summer.
Join Refulo Muilwa every Friday for that 1 hour weekly dose of art and entertainment news at 9 p.m. on Trends.
Hello again. Time for us now to shift our focus to what is happening around the regions in South Africa. Now, we look back at the newly established African Standby Force. The dream of an AU Standby Force became a reality when soldiers from different parts of the continent completed a military exercise over the weekend. More than 5,000 soldiers took part in the exercises held at the Lohatla Combat Training Centre near Postmatsburg in the Northern Cape. Now, we talk to SANDF General Kolani Mabangwa on the importance of this exercise.
From the 5 regional economic communities of the African continent, that is the North African Capability, the East African Community, the Southern African Development Community, the East and Central African Community, as well as the economic community of the West African states. So soldiers were drawn from those countries. Each country may use its own criteria in terms of selecting the best out of what they have. Those then would be part of the African Union standby force. And then they were coming to South Africa to have been trained or to undergo the training that has been taking place for the past 3 weeks, as you've mentioned.
Now, speaking of the training, take us through the exercises that were undertaken by the soldiers.
Well, the exercise was based on a fictitious country that was simulating a sort of instability in that country called Corona. Now, in that instance, we first exercised the rapid deployment capability of the African Standby Force, whereby a situation will happen that the security situation is deteriorated and has been a gross human rights violation in such an extent that the African Union feels that they should send in a force to intervene and stop that crisis. Then that was the first part. And then the second part is whereby the forces were exercised in normal, traditional peacekeeping capabilities or peacekeeping exercises where they can go into a situation, exercise humanitarian assistance, routine peacekeeping roles as stipulated in the UN Charter, Charter 6, UN Charter.
General, are you confident that the soldiers are ready for their first deployment early next year?
Well, based on the reports that we have received from those who are conducting and supervising the exercise, is that the African Union or the African continent has the capability to deploy a force, either being a rapid deployment capability or in a traditional peacekeeping role.
Now, talk to us about the role of the African Union Standby Force specifically. What is the protocol to respond to crisis?
Well, the protocol to respond to crisis, it will be determined by the structures of the AU, which on time to time are monitoring the situation as it happens in different countries. And then on the basis that have been submitted to those structures, the structures will recommend that there should be a force that is deployed in that particular area on the basis of what they've got at hand.
Now, you've just mentioned the AU in this context. Is the standby force a separate entity on its own and support and provide support for the AU? How exactly does that relationship work?
Well, we should not take it as a separate entity from the AU. We should take it as an instrument of the African Union that it will use to either pursue its objectives or to protect its own objectives or purposes. In this case, it will be peace and stability within the continent, which are the requirements for conducive growth, which are the requirements for growth and for economic growth and development.
Now let's look at some of the challenges that the African continent is facing. I mean, there's Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. How are we going to deal with that exactly? And maybe you can mention some more challenges that I haven't mentioned in this context.
Well, those are instances that are happening currently, of which the African Union is still pursuing the best option on how to deal and handle those instances. However, if we come to the force itself, and then the AU will have taken a decision to say that in this particular instance, we need to deploy this force of this size with these capabilities.
General, does everyone on the continent support the force?
When you say everyone, in this case, we'll be saying, do each and every country that is a member state of the African Union support that force? Yes, it is, because it was a decision that was taken consensus previously when the when the Organization of African Union was transformed into the African Union. And you remember soon after that, then there was this concept of establishing African Standby Force, which should be operational by the end of December 2015.
Now, just finally, General, let's look at this training specifically. It's now just ended. Is there going to be consistent training throughout the years? How exactly is it going to happen going forward?
Well, the training within the military, what keeps you going as a military and what keeps you confirmed to say that you have a force that can stand any challenges is continuous training and evaluation of that training if that still meets the demands of that particular time or of the particular moment. So there will be continuous exercises which will be scheduled to train or exercise a particular capability or to evaluate or test a certain capability within the force itself. So it's not something that is gone and forgotten. There will be some follow-up exercises.
That was SANDF General Kolani Mabanga talking there to Tabile Ngwata over the weekend about the AU standby force exercises over the weekend that took place in the Northern Cape. Now, more than 400 military and South African police personnel participated in a 91st anniversary parade over the weekend to mark the 91st anniversary in honor of the fallen heroes of the country. The Remembrance is an annual event across the country and honors all South Africans who made the supreme sacrifice for their country in wars and conflicts, including the struggle for freedom and democracy. Earlier, SABC journalist Nozintombi Mia spoke to Johannesburg City Mayor Park Starr and General Yam from the Defence Force on the significance of this event.
Yes, thank you so much. We are outside the Gauteng Legislature office where we're expecting to have a parade from the military personnel as well as the police. It will be over 400 personnel that will be marching down Harrison all the way up to the front stairs of Harrison, where they then will be discussing what the event is about. Now, to talk to me a bit more about this is Johannesburg Mayor Mr. Parks Tau. Mr. Tau, why is this event so important for you guys?
Well, thank you very much. As the City of Johannesburg, we've generally always held the annual Remembrance Sunday service and centered it around different themes. It's always important that we celebrate, I think, the breakthrough of the end of World War II and the reality that that was the beginning of peace in many ways to the world and the development of the world. But we are focusing here today on the Holocaust and how that has impacted on the world, but also spending a bit of time reflecting on the reality that South African soldiers made huge sacrifices during the war to contribute towards peace in the world, and in particular black soldiers who were not celebrated at the time. It is important that we acknowledge them as legionnaires and continuously say that they made a great contribution to South Africa and to the world.
All right. So this event has been held annually since 2006, and for this year you'll be focusing, aside from the Holocaust, but also on the families of those who've fallen. Let's talk more about that.
It's very important that we focus on the families of those who have fallen. It's very important because, in fact, if you think about it, they made the supreme sacrifice for the peace that the world has attained. And in many ways, they lost their loved ones, and the families, I don't think, always get the acknowledgement of the fact that they've had to live with the pain of losing a loved one in war. And for us as the City of Johannesburg, it's always important, and we continuously say that we need to find ways of supporting our men and women in uniform and ensuring that all the necessary support is provided in terms of the needs of the families, particularly those that died in war, both World War II, but also in current peace initiatives that are being undertaken on the African continent.
All right, thank you so much. I also have with me General Yam, who is one of the key generals in the South African National Defence Force. Why is it important for you for this parade to have happened for your members?
Ma'am, I must particularly mention that I here stand and am representing the Chief of the South African Army and the South African National Defence Force right now, standing by the Mayor, who's recently showed support for the armed forces. This day is critically important for us. It's the end. It's the marking of the end of the Second World War, with a theme focusing on the Holocaust. But no nation wants war, and the armed forces are only there to prevent that particular war, that it doesn't happen. A lot of lives were lost. It's not only a lot of lives that were lost. It's families whose loved ones were never there for years before they even died, for that matter. Some were maimed, and it is just important that they do this under the flag of their own country. And in South Africa in particular, we had a lot of them dying, and the lifespan was almost a second. For instance, if you'll talk of Delvote, where a number of South African soldiers lost their lives. Now, for our people, and in this case, through the Johannesburg Metro, to say we recognize that, we love you, we will remember you, is the most important thing to the soldiers.
All right. And what do you think are some of the key issues that need to be focused on specifically within the Army? What are some of the issues that we need to be looking at?
Our army, at this present moment, is involved in the borders, as you well know, and they're quite porous. They need to be protected. Within the laws of this country, they need to be protected, and that protection enforced. Our soldiers, as you know, they're ducking bullets every day. Those bullets are piercing their skins every day and night. Now in the DRC and in Sudan. As we speak now, they are in much more tense environment than me and you are where we are standing. So it is important for this nation, if it is to survive, must recognize that a foot on the ground of those soldiers guarantees their resilience, it guarantees their maneuver space for this country to project its economic prospects.
Thank you so much, General Yam and Mayor Parks Tau, talking about why Remembrance Sunday is such a critical day for this country and some of the issues that the military goes through with the fact that they are protecting our borders, they are on the ground, and they need to make sure that our borders are protected. So today's event is a very important event in making sure that the lives and the sacrifices of the army personnel, of our police forces, have been recognized. Back to you in the studio.
Yeah, that was Nozintombi Mia speaking to the mayor and the general there. But now, time to shift our focus to what is happening today. Developing story down in the mother city. The University of Cape Town students are protesting outside Parliament right now, demanding free education, amongst other things. Now, seems as if matters are quite heated. Let's go to our reporter, Bulelani Philip, who, well, he's at Parliament. Very good morning to you, Bulelani. It looks quite busy where you are. Just give us a quick scene setter.
Good morning to you, EBN, and to the listeners. Basically, I'm standing right on the balcony of what we call the Max Building in Parliament. As you can see behind me, there's about 100 workers from Nehau in Parliament who've decided to count their tools today, saying that they want better, improved working conditions for the workers. And they are saying that this protest is going to continue up until their demands are met. For now, joining me is Thembiso Ndembe, who is the chairman of Nehau here in Parliament, to talk us through what their demands are as the Nehau branch here in Parliament. As Thembiso, just basically for yourselves, I mean, why have you decided to embark on this protest?
We decided to embark on this protest action because Parliament is violating the agreement that we signed in March. The agreement that was speaking about the conditions of service, that we need to improve the conditions of service. We also agreed that the payment of the performance bonuses should be based on the total package instead of small pensionable value, because Parliament has been robbing us for all these years. Now, when we entered into that agreement, we felt that perhaps we can be able to improve the lives of our workers. But Parliament is violating that agreement because in that particular agreement, the package, there is an issue of the pension, PSOP, which has been robbing our workers for years. You work for Parliament for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. When you leave, you can only take home 100,000, 200,000. Now, you are not able to sustain yourself and your family after you left to work in Parliament. Hence, now, people end up committing criminals or ending up being destitute. Now, we're saying Parliament should deal with those issues, but they are very slow in terms of moving with that. Now, on the issue of the pension, we agreed, the issue of the performance bonuses, we agreed that it will be based on total package. But what they are doing now, they are violating that particular agreement because they say it will be based on the old formula. And we don't agree. Remember, we completed our assessment in April. Now, up until today, they haven't paid. And when they want to pay using the old formula, which only gives employees 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000 rand. And you say that is a performance bonus. That is not in line with government departments. That is not in line with what the provinces are doing. That is not in line with the private sector, outside there. So I'm saying Parliament should lead in terms of treating its employees. They must treat the employees very well. Now, on the issue of vetting, we support the vetting process in principle, as you know. But that process should have been communicated better. We are against corruption and fraud, and we support the principle of good governance. But it was never introduced to the union. We only read in the papers that Parliament was introducing this thing. Now, as partners, we feel that Parliament should have engaged us, and we don't think everybody should be subjected to that high-level security clearance. No, not everybody should be subjected to that. But those things should have been discussed before they introduce it. Now they decided to introduce it without informing us. Now we're saying they must suspend the process up until such time that they have responded to our questions.
Now, for the benefit of the viewers, I mean, which services will be affected by this protest?
All the services. All services. I'm talking about committee secretaries, committee assistants, researchers, procedural officers, chamber assistant, protection services, the catering, and every employee that works in Parliament will withdraw our services up until such time that our demands are met.
Now, we know that there's going to be thousands of students going to be marching to Parliament. Is there a relation between this protest? Is it well-timed to coincide with that, or is it just a routine protest that you had planned?
It's a routine process. We took our decision on Friday after a lengthy discussion with management, and we're not finding ourselves. We're not finding each other. Now, if the students are coming, they're coming to fight for, on what we're fighting for. So I think it's just coincidental. But we'll be fighting for better conditions, performance bonuses, and the issue that Nehau has to be respected in decision making, but it has nothing to do with us.
All right, thank you so much, Thembi Sontembe, who is the Nehau chairman here in Parliament. Ibian, it's back to you in the studio.
Leilani, before you go, oh, he's gone. Are you back? Are you there? Before you go, just tell us what time are the students expected to make their to arrive at Parliament today?
Even we were expecting the students to be here after 11 o'clock, but as I've been running around with this how much we're still going to get to that, but I'm sure many of them are coming there, they're making their way, and also hearing about these reports of these violent protests that are happening at UCT.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bulelani Philip, giving us an update there on the Nehau marches happening. Of course, for better wages. They say they're happy with the work in Parliament. We can tell you reports are coming in of tyres being burnt at UCT. It seems that matters are quite heated on campus there at the moment. The students are on their way from campus then into town in the mother city, where they will be handing over another memorandum of demands to Parliament. We'll be on that story. We are live at Parliament already. We'll keep on monitoring it, and we'll be back a little bit later in the day when things start to happen there around Parliament. We'll be live there shortly. But Kendall Makamati is standing by with, the doping scandal in athletics, and the one that I think the whole country is quite interested in here in South Africa, hashtag Heineke must fall. Let's go to the sports desk where Kendall is standing by.
Thank you very much, Evan, and welcome back to the sports desk. Now, our top story in this hour, in fact, the two top stories, and I'll touch on one right now. The first one is the head of World Athletics, Sebastian Coe, says he faces a long battle to rebuild trust in the sport after the latest allegations of bribery, extortion, and doping cover-ups. Coe was elected president of the International Association of Athletics Federations, the IAAF, in August, on a manifesto promising reform. Now, his statement comes after French authorities placed his long-serving predecessor, Lamine Diack, under formal investigation on suspicion of corruption and money laundering. A report by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, is set to deepen the athletic scandal that, according to one of the document's authors, eclipses even the alleged corruption at soccer's governing body, FIFA. The WADA report is expected to focus on allegations that Russian athletics authorities have been covering up positive doping cases, as well as extorting money from leading athletes in return for concealing the fact that they'd failed drugs tests. Now, as you know, a massive weekend of sports has just gone by, with much-needed wins for some and less desired knockouts for others. Now, as we kick off the new week, there's trouble brewing in some quarters. With me to talk about some of this trouble, specifically in South African rugby, as well as other sporting news from the weekend, I'm joined by Jody Hendricks. Good morning and welcome back to Newsroom.
Morning, Kendall.
Jody, first up, let's talk about the hashtag Heineke must fall letter that's been circulating and doing the rounds over the last couple of days. How important is this letter written by two former Springbok captains?
Well, interestingly enough, I literally spoke to one of the authors of the letter about 30 minutes ago, Wynand Klaasen, the former Springbok captain, and he put it to me that this is not, first of all, not a personal attack on Heineke. They just think that his game plan is a bit out of date. They said, he told me it's a bit, basically a decade too late. And that if you look at his Springbok record over the past 4 years that he's been in charge of the national team, they said beating the All Blacks 1 in 8 matches. And then also, we all know about the record defeats to Japan, Argentina. So they are saying basically, and also that he said we should judge him after the Rugby World Cup. And they say taking all that into account, it's quite clear that he's failed the nation and the rugby supporters are quite fed up and they should need some new blood.
Some of the other Springbok coaches, in fact, off late, the recent Springbok coaches, we take Jake White, who won the World Cup, got fired. We take Peter de Villiers, who won the Tri-Nations, beat the All Blacks 3 times in 1 year, 3 times in a row, 5 times overall. He got fired.
Also beat the British and Irish Lions. And I think that comes down... It's basically which coach is the flavour of the month. Jake White, like you said, after winning a World Cup, you know, what's the chance of the All Blacks firing Steve Hansen after winning a World Cup? So, and Peter de Villiers, I think during his tenure as Springbok coach, made a couple of mistakes, made a couple of enemies in the Saru boardroom, but it seems like Heineke has the backing of the right people, and I honestly can't see how far this campaign will get.
How's this for a theory? I read about it last night, that the whole idea behind, firstly, Japan beating the Springboks was to get Japan to win and popularize the World Cup in Japan, because it was on a slippery slide downwards, 1. And 2, that Heineke may have been promised a job before Peter de Villiers, and then when Divi got it because he was a black candidate, he was promised a job for 8 years.
You'll remember that famous quote by Oregon Hoskins where he said it was not only rugby that was at stake when they appointed Peter de Villiers. I think when it comes, rugby in Japan over the last few years, Kendall, has definitely been on an up. They are investing a lot of money into the game there. They are buying some of the best players from around the world. They've appointed Eddie Jones, probably one of the best rugby brains in the world, as the head coach, and look what he did. Unfortunately, South Africa was on the receiving end, and also they've just qualified for the World Sevens in Rio next year.
No, I hear you, but I mean, do you think this was part of a bigger plot, everything that's happened?
I don't think so. I think if I did commentary in the Japan game, and Kendall, the Springboks was nowhere in that game, and I can't think there's any plot. But I think, honestly, the Heineke must fall campaign. I've also spoken to Bakkies Botha, and he says it's not all Springbok players that are supporting this. There's a lot of players that actually support Heineke and thinks he should build the team because there's enough youngsters to be competitive at the World Cup and possibly win it in 2019.
Did Bakkies say which players were supporting?
Well, he said, first of all, he's one of them, and he said a lot of the more current Springboks are supporting him, and it's a lot more of the older players that's going against Heineke.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, let's move on to other big news that happened over the weekend. We had a double derby over the weekend in the Telkom knockout semi-finals. There was a 20 derby, which a lot of people didn't really speak about prior to it happening, but it was fantastic. Got a 3-1 win from Mamelodi Sundowns. And then, of course, there was the Soweto derby. Let's touch on the 20 derby first. What did you make of the performances?
That was the game of the weekend for me. Lots of goals expected, what you expected in a knockout game. And I think it also took the pressure off Pitso Motsimane, but also put a bit more pressure on Gordon Egerson, because we all know that SuperSport United is also not doing well in the league. On the other hand, I think the game between Pirates and Chiefs was a complete contrast to last week, where Pirates had a 3-1 victory. This game, after 120 minutes, because remember, they went into extra time, Kendall, they didn't not produce one goal, and we had to go to a penalty shootout. And unfortunately for Pirates, unfortunately for Chiefs, they won. And I think, I think that also a bigger problem in South African rugby is the goal drought that we're seeing at the moment. That in 120 minutes, where the two biggest teams and best teams in South Africa couldn't produce any goals.
Well, that said, Brilliant Kuzwayo was very good in goals. Between the sticks, he made quite a lot of very important saves.
He was, for me, the standout player in the whole game, and I think was the difference probably between winning and losing.
All right, now let's see, like in terms of the final itself, it's been Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs. I think it's probably like a precursor to the battle for the league.
Yeah, also, not to the league only, I think it's going to be a good knockout game. I think they both play expansive games of rugby, two very good coaches. And I also think, but if you talk about the league, Wits is still there. I'm sure Gavin Hunt will have something to say about, the title race in the PSL. But the Telkom knockout game, I think we're looking forward to a cracking final. The big question now is where it's going to be.
And you actually mean soccer, right? Because no problem. And with regards to Novak Djokovic, he's an absolute phenomenon. He's won 6 Masters 1000s in one season. It's the 4th time that he wins this particular championship. He's unstoppable.
He's the best tennis player in the world at the moment. There's no doubt about that. also, Kendall, like you said, it's a 1,000 event, and this is where all the big name players come to secure their world rankings and to come into the top 10 in the world. This is obviously outside of the Grand Slams. Then after the 1,000s, you have your 500s and your 250s, where your lesser name players are trying to make a name for themselves and to break into the 1,000s. But Novak Djokovic, no other players is really standing up to him. You're disappointing in Nadal, disappointed in Federer, disappointed in
Federer is 33 years old. He's had his time. He's been absolutely amazing. Still plays sublime tennis, but he can't compete against the ever-athletic and
number 2 tennis player in the world, and also you would have expected him to at least go a bit further. But like I said, all the the big name players, nobody is actually giving Djokovic a run for his money, and that's why. And undoubtedly, he's the best tennis player in the world.
Oh, very good, Jody. Thank you very much for coming through to chat to us. We believe that there's lots more to talk to you about, but we'll stand by and see what unfolds in the rest of the boardroom politics that go around, especially the WADA report coming out in IWF.
Thanks.
All right, now that was Jody Hendricks. He was giving us a lowdown on the best of the best from the weekends, sports, and wrapping it all up for us. Now, we're going to take what are we doing now? Okay, I do believe that we're going to go straight through to Eben, who's standing by to give us actually an update. He's got a guest with him right now, the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development. Back to you, Eben.
Thank you, Kendall. I've just been rechristened. Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development hope to give used schools a new lease of life. Gauteng government has been inundated with requests and complaints from the public regarding closed and abandoned schools. Now, the MEC, Mayatula Kozana, joins us in studio to tell us a little bit more about that. A very good morning to you, MEC, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you.
Now, please give us the latest on the Gauteng infrastructure development projects concerning vandalized schools and unused schools, so to speak, and abandoned schools.
Yes, no, thank you very much. We have now been, given a responsibility to be the custodian of all the unused schools in Gauteng. Only last year, 2014, 15 financial year, by the Premier. Indeed, these schools were closed some time back, and they were vandalized. But, having done a little bit of research, they are now being used illegally. So now that we are the custodian of the properties of government, including the unused schools, we now really have to ensure that these schools are used legally by the people in the community. Some of them would like to use them as business. Some of them would like to use these as churches, etc. So we have to regularize and legalize that particular situation. That's what we are doing now.
Why were you not the custodians of these schools before?
The Department of Education was the custodian of these schools before. All schools, those that are used, and these ones that are vandalized now.
And then what happened with the Department of Education letting these schools go abandoned?
Probably they were looking at an approach as to what exactly to do with these schools that are now not being used. They were not used because some parents took their children to town with the perception that the education in town is better than in the townships. But the things have now turned around. Education in the townships is actually very, very good. So I want to believe that probably they wanted to think about an approach and a strategy on what exactly to do. Do they continue to use the schools? Do they modernize them? Or, do they hand over to the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure?
Now, I must congratulate you because I tell you, just across the, on the copy here by the SABC, there's an abandoned building that was there that was revamped, and it's now a primary school. Absolutely fantastic in the community around the corner. So how many properties are we talking about that will be revamped and revived?
Yes, the Gauteng Department of Education has handed over 20 of these schools, but there are more of them. About 14 of them are in the Johannesburg area, Soweto in particular. About 2 of them are in Sidibeng area, and I think about 4 of them are in the Tshwane area. So these are the schools, the 20 that we are saying, please, communities, business people, non-governmental organizations, if you want to use them, please apply for lease. We can assist you so that you can just pay a minimal rental for the lease and make good use of these schools, because the MEC for Education says, I'm not going to need these schools. I already have taken some of the schools. So please, do something about the schools.
So currently the schools that are occupied by people living in them, how are you going to deal with those people? Or if the buildings are vandalized, are you going to revamp them as the department?
We are currently talking to the occupants of the school. We have to ensure that they apply so that they can actually list them formally with the government, because this is a regulation by Treasury that you can't just use government property without any, any lease. So that's what we are trying to do here. We will not necessarily rehabilitate these vandalized schools, but I'm sure the businesses who want to use their properties for business or the non-governmental organizations, they are normally, NGOs would normally be funded by social development. I'm sure they can use the money to actually, rehabilitate the schools. But that means we'll have to offset some of the money from the market-related rental so that they don't pay high rentals because they have to take care of the of rehabilitating the schools themselves.
And it doesn't necessarily just have to be schools. It can be anything else that the community feels they need the buildings for.
Absolutely. We have currently just completed to do an asset register, immovable asset register. We now know what land we own as government. We now know what properties we own as government. We now know what properties are used and what properties are not used buildings. So they can also identify buildings that have been there in the community not being used and actually apply to lease and make good use of these buildings.
What sort of lease periods are we talking about for these particular buildings?
For now, we are talking about short-term lease, really, because we then have to ensure that the people can take good care of the properties of government. Short-term, I'm not too sure of the exact number of years, but we are looking at a long-term lease situation going forward, provided they take good care of these properties.
And ownership will still rest with the department?
Absolutely. Ownership will rest with the Gauteng government. We as a department are just a custodian. We are taking care of a caretaker, taking care of these properties on behalf of Gauteng government.
So, MEC, how do people get in touch with you to make use of these properties that are standing abandoned and vandalized right now?
Yes, of course. We have a senior manager called Tina Mavungu. So we'd like our people to send an email to Tina, as in THINA, dot Mavungu, MAVHUNGU.
VHUN.
Yes, NGU, at gauteng.gov. .za. The telephone number is 011-891-6868. So they can phone this person or they can send an email. They will be given a form, a lease form, and they will be assisted to sign the lease form and use the building legally.
MEC, thank you so much for your time. And the people that's currently staying, if they want to convert that into livable space for people to live there, they can also do that if they want.
They should inform us first, and then we should have an agreement with them.
That number again to dial 011-891-6868. That is the number for Tina Mavungu at the department, and that is where we got to leave it. MEC, thank you so much for coming in.
Very much.
That was the MEC, Mayatula Koza, here in studio for the construction and development of management of public infrastructure and to optimize that buildings really to its maximum. That's where we got to leave it now. South Africans in the interior have been warned of an extremely hot and dry week ahead. The South African Weather Service has issued a warning of persistently high temperatures here in Gauteng, in Limpopo, Mpumalanga and the northwest. Temperatures in some areas are expected to soar above 40 degrees Celsius. Philip Hawkins is here to tell us a little bit more about that.
Before we say goodbye, we ask you a question today, important question, Elvis, in the context of where we are now. If you look at the weather outlook,
Whether
not really
water
good.
is scarce, it's going to be dry, it's going to be hot. And that question that we posed to you today was, what are you doing to save water? Now, here are some of the tweets that you've sent to us this morning. Start off with you.
Khululeko Ngwenya, Kendall is a smart guy.
He reckons drilled boreholes.
Yes.
Nice one.
You know, it's quite affordable actually to drill a borehole in your property. It's less than 10,000 rand.
But the water table has been dropping success for the last 10 years. Though.
Yeah.
Golden says, take a quick shower instead of a bath. Drink 2 glasses of water instead of 8. No tea and coffee. Save water and electricity. And they might have probably add there, drink beer, save water. Well,
drink beer, save water. Yeah, Andile Kava says, use shower instead of bath. That is a very smart thing to do, is to shower instead of a bath, Kendall.
And Frank Chana Dube reckons SABC Newsroom, evaporation takes place every single second.
So do not water your plants during daytime, the hottest time of the day. Don't put your sprayers out now. Put them on at night so that the water don't evaporate. Actually, the plants get the best way for them to take up water and to survive during these tough times. But Elvis has a particular tip that is supported by the Gauteng government. Is that
the Gauteng government has indicated that people should shower together. Now, I'm not too sure if that is just shower with anybody.
Yeah, I hope you keep it in the family, if one can keep it like that.
No comment.
No comment. Let's keep it all above board. That's where we wrap Newsroom today. From Elvis, Kendall, myself, it's always great to be you. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
I'll leave it there.
Bye-bye.